Chapter 208. Everyone. Good morning. In an extremely excited state, Teacher Little Rabbit, who was standing on the podium, made a cute pose. Finally, everyone has an official, tripping double blade. This is really worthy of celebration. Have your seats and dormitory been adjusted? With that said, Teacher Little Rabbit's gaze went straight to the last row in the innermost part of the classroom. Looking at the lonely teenager sitting there, she revealed a sweet and evil smile. Oh, it seems that there are people who don't have their own, tripping double blade. In the classroom, all the students followed Teacher Little Rabbit's gaze and looked at the lonely teenager sitting in a seat. Bearing the gaze from all directions, Noah, who was sitting there alone, used his hand to support his chin, turned his head, and looked out the window. Yes. In the end, Noah did not officially become a tripping double blade with others. Because no one can become Noah's tripping double blade. Just yesterday, Ivan and Julie became a tripping double blade. They moved out of Noah's room and were arranged to another room. It was said that Tachibana and Sui Gaya formed a tripping double blade relationship. Ninefold Toru and Kue Hokusaki also formed a tripping double blade relationship. All the first-year students in the class became a tripping double blade with the person they liked. Whether it was the dormitory room or the class seats, they were all adjusted so that every student and their tripping double blade sat together and lived together. Originally, Noah thought that the school would arrange a tripping double blade for him, who did not choose a tripping double blade. Who would have thought that in the end, all the first-year students had formed a tripping double blade relationship with each other? In other words, the only person who did not have a tripping double blade was Noah. After a week of survival of the fittest, in this class, there were a total of 41 freshmen who did not apply to drop out and stayed in the school. In groups of 2, there were a total of 20 groups of tripping double blade in the class, but one person was left behind and could not form a team. This person was Noah. Even Noah did not expect that things would turn out like this. However, compared to being suddenly assigned a deskmate and roommate that he was unfamiliar with, this result made Noah feel much more relaxed. At the very least, Noah was alone in terms of his dormitory and seat. He could fully enjoy his personal space without worrying too much. Ivan and Julie sat in front of Noah. Alone? Ivan looked at the nonchalant Noah with the rest of the students and seemed a little worried. Teacher, is it okay even without the tripping double blades? Even if you say that, I, Teacher Little Rabbit, have no way of suddenly finding someone to form a tripping double blade with this reclusive exception. Teacher Little Rabbit pretended to helplessly spread out her hands, but there was a smile on her face. However, we will have even more intense training in the future. When that time comes, there will definitely be people who can't take it and apply to drop out. When that time comes, there will be people who will form a team with the exception. Hearing this, the hearts of everyone in the classroom became heavy. Then, since the official tripping double blade has been decided, we should also begin training on the blaze. Teacher Little Rabbit did not seem to notice the abnormal atmosphere and continued to speak in high spirits. I'm here to inform everyone that next week, we will be conducting a mock battle where the blaze is allowed, new blade battle. The sudden news made many people involuntarily suck in a breath of cold air. Of course, it was caused by surprise and confusion. No way. Ivan, who was sitting in front of Noah, said in a shocked voice. They're going to fight right from the start? Even Noah frowned, feeling helpless against this violent school. It was a weapon that was materialized from his soul, blaze. Although it was a weapon with a simple structure under normal circumstances, since it was a weapon, it meant that it had the power to kill. The blaze, formed by the soul, could only be used against the soul. This was what the chairman of Haolang Academy said. However, a weapon was still a weapon. If one casually used it when it wasn't necessary, the impact would be relatively greater. Furthermore, blaze was a materialization of one's soul. There were still many secrets to it, so it wasn't appropriate to casually use it. Therefore, the Academy clearly stated that without permission, students were not allowed to casually use the blaze, otherwise they would be severely punished. However, Haolang Academy was an organization that cultivated combat skills and surpassers, so it was impossible for them not to target the surpassers, the greatest weapon, even if they were to use the blaze for training. The students present were already prepared to use the blaze at any time. However, they did not expect that they would directly use the blaze in a mock battle. Now, I will begin to explain the rules of the new blade battle. Everyone, perk up your ears. It's so nice. Teacher Little Rabbit put her hands on her head and made a rabbit's ear gesture. First, the schedule. It will be on Saturday next week, the day before Golden Week. The start time will be at 5 p.m., and the end time will be at 7 p.m. There will be a total of 2 hours, and the starting signal will be the sound of the clock tower. The location will be in the area north of the academy. Then, the opponent for the battle is. Teacher Little Rabbit's face showed an extremely joyful smile, and she raised a finger and said this sentence very happily. Except for your tripping dual blades, everyone else is an enemy. Below, Noah's eyebrows suddenly raised. Wait. Teacher. Ivanley immediately raised his hand and stood up. If that's the case, won't Noah be at a disadvantage without the tripping dual blades? Pulling, little sister Ponytail, are you serious? Teacher Little Rabbit's eyes were already curved into the shape of a crescent moon. During the entrance ceremony, with the strength of a normal person, he beat up a rank 3, who had received several years of physical and mental training and battle technique training. Or a pair of tripping dual blades who had just started training for a week. Who is more at a disadvantage? Ivanley's breath stopped. Not to mention Ivanley, even the rest of the students in the class looked at each other in dismay. They all had a bitter expression on their faces. After hearing Teacher Little Rabbit's words, the crowd of students realized that even without the tripping dual blades, Noah was still an unbeatable existence. Not to mention his amazing martial arts skills and experience, even Noah's blaze, who was known as the exception, was a very thorny problem. After all, even if he was a surpasser, if he was only at the rank I level, he could only be considered a superhuman and not a real inhuman. At the very least, if one wanted to clearly see a bullet that was faster than the speed of sound, it was absolutely impossible to reach the rank 3 level. And in this kind of situation, in a contest between hot weapons and cold weapons, which side had the advantage, there was no need to ask, a normal person would know. Everyone knows that the Daybreak Star rune has ranks. Every year students will participate in the Ascension ceremony at the end of the semester. Those who have received sufficient physical and mental training will be able to successfully advance. Looking at the silent crowd of students, Teacher Little Rabbit said as if to encourage them. But, for the tripping dual blades who have achieved excellent results in the new blade battle, as a special reward, the school will give them a chance to advance. This sentence made the hearts of all the students become lively. Noah, who originally lacked interest in this so-called new blade battle, also had a light in his eyes as he straightened his back. If there was anything else that could arouse Noah's interest in staying in the school, other than feeling that he could get a clue about the world fragment, then it would be the Daybreak Star rune's ascension. Because, that was the opportunity to let Noah's spirit and magic power be sufficiently improved. Although everyone would have such an opportunity at the end of the semester, whether or not they could successfully advance, the more opportunities to improve their strength, the better. Everyone thought so. Noah was naturally no exception. And Teacher Little Rabbit, who clearly saw Noah's performance, revealed a smile. Only, that smile was a bit sinister. Chapter 209. Most of today's classes were normal classes, and the training classes were in the afternoon. After class, as soon as the Chinese teacher walked out of the classroom, Ivanley impatiently turned around and slumped on the table in front of Noah with a melancholy expression. Undoubtedly, we've just decided on the tripping double blade, and now we're going to have a blaze mock battle. This school is really tormenting people. Is that so? Noah shook his head and said. I feel that more actual combat would be more effective in increasing our strength. Before Ivanley could reply, a stern voice sounded. That's right. Following this voice, Noah, Ivanley, and Julie were surrounded by Tachibana and Sui Gaoya. I think that the school also feels that actual combat would be more effective in increasing the strength of the students, right? Tachibana agreed with Noah's statement. Whether it's the entrance ceremony, the physical strengthening long-distance running training, or the daily classes, there have always been a lot of actual combat training. Therefore, now that we're starting to teach how to use blaze, it definitely can't be separated from actual combat. Ever since they entered the school, until now, until the announcement of a new blade battle, Noah and the others had never experienced using blaze before. Now, the class on how to use blaze was finally about to begin. With how ridiculous the school had always been, it wasn't hard to imagine that they would let everyone participate in a mock battle with blaze right from the start. Even so, I still hope that the school can give us some time to get used to blaze. Sui Gaoya said with a nervous expression. The school forbids students from using blaze, and since entering the school, we haven't had any classes related to blaze. I haven't even used my own blaze before, so I don't know how to use it. During the entrance ceremony, only those who had defeated their opponents could enter the school. That was the only time the people present had used their blaze fang. Sui Gaoya didn't fight at that time. The reason was very simple. It was because Sui Gaoya's opponent was scared and ran away. Sui Gaoya, on the other hand, was so scared that her legs went soft. In the end, she didn't manage to escape in time and ended up staying behind. That was why Sui Gaoya and Ivanli were the same. Both of them had passed because they had lost their opponents, so they hadn't really used their blaze yet. As for me, I've learned sword Dao before. However, Ivanli's tone was rather relaxed. Although I haven't used blaze before, my blaze is also a sword, so there shouldn't be any problems using it. My blaze is also a type of weapon that I've often used in the past. Orange Bar smiled steadily. So, I don't have any problems using it. Julie opened her mouth slightly and only said this one sentence. There are no barriers to use it. Ivanli, Julie, Tachiba, and Sui Gaoya all turned to look at Noah. Why are you looking at me? Noah rolled his eyes. Don't tell me you guys think that I don't even know how to pull the trigger? The group of girls looked at each other. Other than Julie, they all laughed bitterly. That's right. For Noah, whose blaze was a revolver, even if he wasn't very familiar with his blaze, he should still know how to pull the trigger. Facing a real gun, even if he only knew how to use it at this level, it would still bring an unimaginable threat and pressure to the group of students. That's great. Sui Gaoya couldn't help but murmur. If only I had the experience of using blaze, that would be great. This time is different from the entrance ceremony. Even if you fail, you won't be kicked out of the school. Orange Bar comforted her. So, yeah, you don't have to be too stubborn. After all, you can start using blaze after school. You can get used to it when the time comes. From today until the start of a new blade battle, as long as the first grade students applied, they could use blaze in the school after school to practice. Therefore, even if they didn't have the experience of using blaze until the start of a new blade battle, and even during the process, there would be plenty of opportunities to use blaze. But Sui Gaoya's expression was still uneasy. I'm not good at fighting, it's okay. Orange Bar tried to calm Sui Gaoya's uneasiness. This time is different from the entrance ceremony. It's not a one-on-one duel, but a battle between tripping blades. I'm still here. Sui Gaoya smiled and nodded, but that smile, no matter how you looked at it, was very forced. Noah and the others, who already had a certain degree of understanding of Sui Gaoya, easily guessed her thoughts. Needless to say, Sui Gaoya was definitely worried that she would be a burden to Orange Bar. Gaoya, don't worry. Ivanli purposely made his tone sound cheerful and patted Sui Gaoya's back. There are only a few people in our class who have experience in martial arts or sports. The rest are like you, ordinary students. Orange Bar is the successor of Orange Bar, so it's impossible for him to lose to those people. When fighting, don't forget to use breathing technique. Noah also looked at Sui Gaoya. That way, at least you'll have enough strength. If you can't win, just run. There's nothing to be ashamed of. N. Suegaya nodded her head vigorously. Her expression seemed to have eased a lot compared to before. At this time, 2 male students also came over. Are you having a battle meeting? With this sentence, the 2 male students, who Noah was familiar with, also joined in. Almost at the same time, Suegaya, who wasn't good at dealing with boys, shrank behind Orange Bar. What's wrong? Noah smiled calmly. Kyuchong, Okazaki, are you here to scout the enemy? The 2 newcomers were Kyuchong and Okazaki. Is there a need to scout the enemy? Okazaki pushed the glasses on her nose and said in a very arrogant tone. We've already seen your skills. Also, the list that the Academy gave us as a reference for choosing, tripping double blade, also recorded the general information of everyone in our class. Kyuchong rubbed his head. Although I haven't seen it, Okazaki memorized it all. That counts as enemy information, right? I've also seen that list. I vainly looked at Kyuchong and Okazaki with interest. Very few people in our class have experience in martial arts, but I think all of you have practiced martial arts before, right? That's a really strong enemy. Orange Bar showed a reluctant smile. Yeah, we have to do our best. N. Suegaya nodded again. Kyuchong fixed his gaze on Noah, his eyes full of fighting spirit. I hope we can go up against each other again this time. Humph. Okazaki smiled provocatively. This time, we won't lose. Kyuchong and Okazaki looked at each other and smiled, then turned and left. A declaration before the battle? I vainly blinked at Noah. They're not afraid of going up against you. Is that so? Noah shrugged and said. Are you afraid of going up against me? How is that possible? Ivanli and Orange Bar answered almost at the same time. Last time, you purposely let me in, I still remember that. Ivanli said with dissatisfaction. I want to prove that at that time, even if you didn't let me in, I could still get in. I've been wanting to fight you for a long time. Orange Bar was a little excited. I won't lose that easily. Yeah, Julie nodded. Even if your opponent is Noah, you can't admit defeat. Suegaya secretly glanced at Noah, then shyly hid behind Orange Bar. Obviously, it was a bit difficult for this timid girl to make a declaration. Looking at this group of cute girls, Noah smiled knowingly. Let's do our best. Chapter 210. In the woods surrounding the school, Noah walked in with steady steps. He arrived at an open space and looked around. Looking at the open space and the surrounding trees, Noah nodded slightly. He closed his eyes, reached out a hand, and pressed it on his chest. Blaze. Following Noah's call, a buzz trembled. A pure white geometric pattern called the star pattern spun and spread out from the center of Noah's chest and imprinted itself on Noah's chest. Pung. A burst of fiery red light rose from the star pattern and turned into a gorgeous flame. It burned fiercely, and not long after, it condensed into the shape of a weapon. It was the shape of a weapon called a gun. The burning flame flashed, and the pitch-black gun that was covered with white tree-like patterns was exposed to the air. Noah could clearly feel that compared to the time before it had become a part of his soul and turned into his blaze, what kind of changes had happened to the revolver now that it had become blaze. First of all, the cold feeling that was unique to metal in the past had disappeared and was replaced by a fiery warmth. Noah opened his eyes and looked at the blaze markings on the body of his revolver. He stroked the white markings and carefully experienced the feeling of the gun in his hands. It was completely different from before. In the next second, Noah suddenly raised the gun in his hand and aimed the revolver muzzle at a tree. Pung! The moment he pulled the trigger, the gunshot rang out. The pitch-black bullet formed by mental strength pierced through the air and directly landed on the tree trunk. Pung! Suddenly, the sound of an explosion shook the air. On the tree trunk that Noah's blaze was aimed at, wood chips flew everywhere, and a huge hole the size of a washbasin appeared on top of it. The power was terrifying. Looking at the huge hole in the tree caused by his revolver bullet, Noah tightened his grip on the gun. After a while, he let out a sigh of relief. It's still all right. Although its power has increased after becoming ablaze, its recoil has also increased. This requires the user to have greater arm strength to use it. However, with the arm strength of Stage I, it shouldn't be a big problem to use it. After becoming Noah's ablaze, the revolver, that was originally comparable to an anti-tank sniper rifle's power had indeed increased, making this gun that was specially modified for power became even more terrifying. Of course, as the power increased, so did the recoil. If one wanted to use this gun, it wasn't strange that the required arm strength would increase. However, since Noah's arm strength was only comparable to that of an ordinary level 1 after going through the limitation, he could still use it normally. After confirming this, Noah let out a sigh of relief. Without the limitations of bullets, and with sufficient arm strength, the revolver no longer had any shortcomings. Compared to the simpler blaze of the other surpassers, this blaze had too many advantages. After confirming the status of his blaze, Noah did not continue to stay here and walked out of the forest. Noah also had another blaze, knight's sword. There is only one human soul. Therefore, there was only one surpasser's blaze fang. Noah's situation was different from the other surpassers. Under a freak combination of factors, he had 2 blaze fangs. Noah did not intend to reveal this point. The appearance of the revolver, a complex blaze that shouldn't have appeared, had already made Noah extremely eye-catching. Not to mention, he had also gained the title of exception. Noah did not want to show that he was different from others. Therefore, the blaze of the revolver turned into a flame in Noah's hand and disappeared on the spot. After walking out of the forest, Noah, who was about to walk in the direction of the dormitory, suddenly saw a person running in his direction. It was a girl with a delicate face, wearing a gymnastic uniform. She was rhythmically adjusting her breathing while trying to run in Noah's direction. Noah immediately stopped in his tracks and looked over in surprise. Sui Gao? Perhaps because she heard Noah's voice, Sui Gao, who was running, raised her head and met Noah's gaze. A trace of surprise appeared on her face. Noah. Noah classmate? She did not know if it was because she was too surprised, but Sui Gao's footsteps were unsteady. She turned, screamed, and fell forward. Hearing Sui Gao's exclamation, Noah, who reacted, immediately dodged and pounced over without hesitation to catch Sui Gao, who was falling down. Hey, 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 be careful. You little girl, why are you so clumsy? Sui Gao also noticed that she was being hugged by Noah, who had caught her when she fell. At that moment, her entire face turned completely red, and even her ears turned red. Before Sui Gao came to Haolang Academy, she was a girl's student. Naturally, in a situation where everyone around her was of the same sex, Sui Gao did not have many opportunities to come into contact with the opposite sex. Today was definitely the closest Sui Gao had ever come to the opposite sex. If it were in the past, Sui Gao would definitely be extremely flustered at this time. But for some reason, in Noah's arms, Sui Gao unexpectedly found that she did not feel the slightest bit repulsed. Instead, she missed it very much and wanted to stay like this forever. Incredible. It was really incredible. For Sui Gao, who was so close to the opposite sex for the first time, such an experience was really inexperienced and did not understand anything. It was natural that she would feel it was incredible. On the other hand, looking at Sui Gao, who suddenly hid in his arms and did not speak, Noah's body also froze there. This girl, why didn't she get up? This made Noah unable to continue hugging her. Even his expression and voice became a little awkward. Sui Gao. Aren't you getting up? Sui Gao, who was awakened by Noah, instinctively nodded. Immediately, she reacted and her pretty face turned completely red. Then, she realized what she had just done and involuntarily pushed Noah away. Her face was so red that it was almost dripping blood. She stepped back step by step and finally cried out. I'm sorry. Sui Gao, who inexplicably apologized, ran away as if she was escaping. Wait. Noah was shocked and hurriedly chased after her. On the way back to the dormitory, Sui Gao kept her head down. Her face was so red that it was as if it was on fire. She did not dare to raise her head to look at Noah beside her. Moreover, she kept a subtle distance from Noah. Noah's expression was also a little awkward. For a moment, he did not know what to say. He subconsciously chased after her, but in the end, he was greeted with such an uncomfortable atmosphere that Noah wanted to run away several times. But if he ran away like this, it would be as if he was deliberately hugging Sui Gao. Noah held on tightly, and only then did he walk with Sui Gao in the direction of the dormitory. Noah, who felt that this could not go on, could only open his mouth awkwardly and change the topic. Right, Sui Gao, what were you doing there just now? It turned out that Noah's method of changing the topic was quite effective. Sui Gao suddenly showed an awkward expression, as if it was difficult to say. Her gaze moved back and forth between her feet and Noah's body. After a while, she opened her mouth in a mosquito-like voice. Slow, jogging, N. Noah was slightly startled, and his tone was full of uncertainty. Jogging? N. Sui Gao seemed to have plucked up her courage. She raised her head slightly and secretly observed Noah's reaction from the corner of her eyes. Recently, I've been running about 20 kilometers every day. Hearing this, Noah was a little surprised. Chapter 2:11. Run 20 kilometers every day? Looking at Sui Gaoya, who seemed to be in a difficult position, Noah couldn't help but open his mouth. Do you still insist on running 20 kilometers every day after having to run 40 kilometers in the physical enhancement course? Noah was indeed very surprised. After all, ever since Sui Gaoya, who wasn't good at sports, fainted on the first day of the physical strengthening class, this weak-hearted girl had a gloomy expression on her face every day. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that she was afraid of these classes as if they were ghosts. But now, Sui Gaoya actually said something like this. How could Noah not be surprised? Maybe it was because she knew that what she said was very inconceivable, so Sui Gaoya showed a difficult expression. If I want to use my blaze, physical strength is a must. Sui Gaoya explained in a mosquito-like voice. So, in order to increase my physical strength, I want to work a little harder. You need physical strength? Noah couldn't help but touch his chin. Last time, in the list provided to the students to choose the tripping double blade, as a reference, Sui Gaoya's blaze was also written in it. Noah only confirmed the blaze of Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Sui Gaoya. The rest of the students were all omitted. So, when he thought of Sui Gaoya's blaze on the list, Noah was relieved. No wonder, recently I felt that your performance in the physical strengthening class was getting better and better. So it was because of this? Recently, Sui Gaoya was already able to use the breathing technique taught by Noah and shorten the time of a 40-kilometer run to half an hour. Originally, Noah thought that Sui Gaoya was gradually mastering the breathing technique, allowing her breathing to become more precise than before and allowing her physical strength to recover faster. He didn't think that there was actually a private reason for her to work hard. Thinking of this, Noah chuckled. Not bad, Sui Gaoya. Knowing how to work hard is a good thing. Ah. N. Sui Gaoya's pretty face slightly reddened. She lowered her head and started twirling her fingers. That's all because of Noah. N? Noah said with a puzzled expression. What does your hard work have to do with me? Because, if it wasn't for Noah classmate helping me, I might have already given up on staying here and left the school. Sui Gaoya revealed a slightly lonely expression. Actually, whether it's in learning or sports, there have always been a lot of things that I'm not good at. In my previous school, the people next to me were also better than me. It even made me wonder if I was a superfluous existence. So, when someone told me that I have the adaptability of the Daybreak Star rune, that only 1 in 1,000 people has, I was really happy. But after coming to this school, I realized that even if I have talent that others don't have, compared to the people around me, I'm still very useless. Sui Gaoya's head was so low that no one could see her expression. But after a while, she raised her head and smiled shyly. Just when I was about to give up, Noah classmate stood up and saved me, giving me the strength to continue staying here. Saved. Noah was silent for a while, and then directly laughed bitterly. You're making it sound a bit serious. I just thought that since we know each other, it would help you if I could. For me, that's just a small matter, so you can feel grateful to me. But if you say that you're so grateful, I feel that you're thinking too highly of me. Maybe, for Noah classmate, it really is a small matter, but for me, it's saving. Sui Gaya shook her head vigorously, her eyes finally meeting Noah's for the first time. I'm really very happy that you were able to stand up and help me. Moreover, you also gave me the strength to become stronger. I'm really very grateful to you. The breathing technique was not only used to restore physical strength and increase endurance. In fact, if one thought about it carefully, it was very easy to understand the true use of the breathing technique. As previously said, running was the simplest and most effective way to increase physical strength. If one wanted to increase their physical strength, as long as they could continue to run, sooner or later their physical strength would be fully grown. With the help of the breathing technique, Sui Gaoya's physical strength recovery speed became faster, and she was able to persist in running for a longer time. And with enough time to train, why would one worry about their physical strength not increasing by a large amount? Sui Gaoya could now shorten the time of a 40-kilometer run to 1.5 hours. This was the proof. Clearly understanding this point, Noah could only faintly sigh, and revealed a smile to Sui Gaoya. Since it's like this, then you have to continue to work hard. Don't let others surpass you. N. Sui Gaoya first nodded her head blankly, but after she reacted, she repeatedly nodded her head. I'll definitely work hard. Saying this, Sui Gaoya once again lowered her head with a hesitant look. After a while, she spat out a word, letting her small voice drill into Noah's ears with difficulty. Yeah, N? Noah looked at Sui Gaoya in a daze. What? Yeah. Sui Gaoya's pretty face was slightly red as she said. I hope you. You can call me by my name. Call me. Yeah. After finally understanding Sui Gaoya's meaning, Noah couldn't help but laugh, but his answer was unusually straightforward. Then in the future, don't call me Noah classmate, just call me Noah. Sui Gaoya slowly raised her head, and a relieved smile appeared on her adorable face. She nodded her head vigorously. N. Looking at the bright smile on Sui Gaoya's face, Noah also couldn't help but smile. When they first met, the timid Sui Gaoya, who was unwilling to make eye contact with Noah, only daring to timidly hide behind others, secretly observing Noah, was like a phantom, disappearing from Noah's mind. Neither Noah nor Sui Gaoya noticed. The subtle distance between the two at the beginning, unknowingly, had long been occupied by the two figures. At night, sitting in front of the small round table, Noah, who was drinking a cup of hot tea made by himself, looked around. Room, still the same room. Dormitory, still the same dormitory. Even the layout, still the same layout. However, in the closet, all the clothes that didn't belong to Noah had disappeared, and the luggage and belongings of the two girls who lived here not long ago also disappeared. The only things left were Noah's own things. Ivan and Julie, who had formed a formal, tripping double blade, moved out of this room without any accident. To be honest, Noah felt relieved because he didn't have to continue to endure and suffer mentally, but at the same time, he also felt a little lonely deep in his heart. The two friends who had been living in the closest place to him left just like that, excluding all kinds of troubles. It was natural for him to feel lonely. Until now, Noah realized that he wasn't as happy about Ivan and Julie leaving as he thought he was. However, that's also something that can't be helped. Noah muttered to himself as if he was comforting himself. However, when he realized that it was useless, he patted his face and pulled himself together. He raised the cup in his hand and finished all the tea in it before standing up. Let's go to sleep. With that said, Noah was about to turn off the light and get into his bed, but suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Noah stopped and shouted out reflexively. Who is it? The moment his voice reverberated, a silent atmosphere enveloped the entire dormitory. Until 3 or 4 seconds later, a voice sounded slightly. Yeah. With such a simple word, Noah understood who it was. Except for Julie, no one would use such a word as a response. Immediately, Noah hurried to the door and opened it. The next moment, the petite silver-haired girl's figure was imprinted in Noah's eyes. The moment he saw Julie standing at his door, Noah couldn't stay calm. Because, as always, Julie only wore a white shirt and hugged a pillow. Chapter 2:12. Looking at the beautiful silver-haired girl in front of him wearing only a white shirt, hugging a small pillow, her 2 white thighs directly exposed to the air, Noah almost subconsciously reached out, pulled Julie into his room, and closed the door. Bang dash. The loud sound of the door closing suddenly sounded, and it also woke up Julie, who was pulled into the room because she couldn't react in time. The next moment, Julie looked at Noah with her crimson eyes full of disbelief, making Noah laugh out loud. Of course, Julie was wondering why Noah suddenly made such a reaction. But for Noah, he believed that no matter who encountered the same situation, they would have the same reaction. There was no distinction between men and women in this dorm. That is to say, Julie just appeared in the dorm with this outfit that could be admired by boys everywhere. It should be known that Julie was originally a cute girl who could make people stare at her with just her appearance. If Julie appeared in front of the boys with this outfit, Noah didn't know if someone would directly pounce on her, but in that case, the stinky boys would definitely take advantage of her. Noah, who didn't realize that he had subconsciously excluded himself from the list of stinky boys, looked at Julie with a serious face. Although I really want to ask Julie why you came to me, before that, please allow me to ask a very serious question. Yeah. Julie, who was overwhelmed by Noah's imposing manner, answered in a daze, and the ahog on her head trembled. Please, ask. I hope you answer honestly. Noah said with a serious face. On the way here, did you meet anyone? Julie suddenly tilted her head, and the bell immediately shook, making a ding-ling sound. Then, Julie answered honestly. My room and Ivanley's room is not far from here, so, we didn't meet anyone. It made sense. Julie was so cute. Her appearance at the entrance ceremony and when she entered the class had caused a commotion. If Julie's outfit was seen by the boys, there would definitely be an unimaginable commotion. Looking at how calm everything was now, Julie's outfit shouldn't have been seen by anyone. Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, making Julie still look at him in disbelief. What happened? No, it's nothing. Please don't mind it. Noah laughed dryly and then showed a puzzled expression. But, Julie, why are you looking for me at this time? The moment he said that, the ahog on Julie's head trembled again. Undoubtedly, her cute face didn't change at all. She still lacked emotions, but in that instant, Noah felt a sense of pity for her. Immediately after, Julie slightly lowered her head and said such a sentence. Without Noah in the room, I feel a bit lonely. Lonely? Noah scratched his cheek uncomfortably. But isn't there still Ivan? Yeah, Julie nodded her head lightly and stared at Noah without letting go. But, lonely is still lonely. Okay. Noah, who was worried that he would be defeated under Julie's gaze, could only avoid Julie's burning gaze. He glanced at the pillow in front of Julie, and a thought emerged in his mind that made him not know whether to laugh or cry. You're not planning to come over and sleep with me, right? Yeah, this time, Julie's entire body emitted a pitiful aura, as if she was a little animal that was afraid of being abandoned by its owner. She stared straight at Noah. Can't I? If possible, Noah really wanted to answer no. But, if there was someone in this world who could be so cruel to give such an answer at this time, Noah would be very impressed. At least, Noah was defeated in an instant, and he bitterly smiled. Only this time. Yeah, the ahog on Julie's head shook like a tail. Not long after, the lights in the dorm went out. Good night, Noah. Good night, Julie. Almost at the same time, Noah and Julie said good night to each other. Although Julie's voice and expression didn't change from beginning to end, Noah heard a trace of lightness in it. Obviously, Julie's mood was very good. Noah couldn't help but recall the time when he was still in the world of the Black Bullet, those children who were still so innocent and cute despite being ostracized, and Xiaoshi and Tina, who often crawled into his bed. He reached out and patted Julie's head. And this also seemed to make Julie want to be closer to Noah. She tightly grasped Noah's sleeve, buried her head in Noah's arms, and whispered in a somewhat lonely tone. Daddy's smell. Is it? Noah's hand that touched Julie's head became more gentle. This was a child who yearned for love. Even if she had extraordinary looks and extraordinary strength, she still stayed in this dangerous school. This girl who never showed her feelings on her face didn't really have feelings in her heart. It should be said that it was the opposite, right? Therefore, the only thing that was consistent in Julie's appearance was probably her childish appearance, which fully expressed that this girl was still a child who needed love. So, without thinking, Noah said, "If you want, you can come to me at any time." Julie raised her head from Noah's arms and looked at Noah's eyes with a stunned expression. Only then did Noah realize what he had said and hurriedly added. "It's only allowed when you feel very lonely, Julie, do you understand?" Julie, who understood Noah's meaning, a pair of deep red eyes became bright in the darkness, and as if expressing gratitude, she hugged Noah tightly. I'm so happy." On the other side, Noah, who was hugged by Julie, finally felt Julie's small but soft chest and the fragrance that became more intense due to the close contact. His body stiffened. At this time, Noah began to regret his words. In this way, the troubles that finally left Noah also returned, telling Noah that his life was still destined to be full of turmoil. However, at the same time, the faintly discernible loneliness also disappeared. Noah and Julie, who slowly fell into a deep sleep, had long forgotten. They forgot a person. Early morning, before waking up from his sleep state, Noah felt a dangerous aura lock onto him. At this time, Noah quivered and woke up, fiercely opening his eyes. However, a black shadow occupied Noah's entire field of vision, and let out such a voice. "You're enjoying yourself, Noah." Hearing this voice, Noah's mouth slightly opened, his face stiff as he raised his head and looked at the face of the black shadow. Brown waist-length hair was tied into a long ponytail, hanging naturally behind her. Wearing the school uniform, a pair of gem-like eyes were half squinted, filled with a bone-piercing cold light, causing the temperature in the air to drop by a lot. The newcomer, if not Julie's true roommate, then who could it be? "In order to show my strength in front of you in the new blade battle, yesterday I especially worked hard to practice against Blaze. In the end, I didn't even take a shower before I was so tired that I fell asleep." Ivan clenched his fists, closed his eyes, and the veins on his forehead popped out. "And you actually kidnapped Julie to your room. It seems like you spent a not a bad night." Sensing that Ivan's body was surging with an even more dangerous aura, firmly locked onto him, Noah failed to live up to his expectations and revealed a resentful smile, but after realizing that this was useless against the angry girl, he gave up and squeezed out a sentence. "Although I can roughly guess what's going to happen next, I still want to know, do I still have a chance to explain?" Haha. Ivan laughed, an extremely sinister laugh. "Many say no. After finishing his words, Ivan took a deep breath, and shouted under Noah's slightly desperate expression. "You shameless bastard!" The flustered and exasperated voice resounded throughout the entire dormitory. Chapter 213. Dusk, as if it wanted to devour the entire sky, crazily expanded. The shadow behind Noah was elongated by the setting sun. He looked up at the clock tower that could be clearly seen from within the school grounds or even from outside. It had been a long time since he saw the clock tower. The corners of his mouth curled into an arc that was full of fighting spirit. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Not long after, the clear sound of the clock tower's bell resounded through the entire sky. Like the thunder before a storm, it announced the start of the battle. It announced the start of the battle called New Blade Battle. Standing at the waiting area determined by drawing lots, Noah clearly felt that the moment the clock tower's bell rang, the entire school's atmosphere became tense. Then, with dusk as the background, every place in the school flickered with light. It flickered with the light of a scorching flame that any surpasser would be familiar with. That was the phenomenon of a weapon that represented the soul obtaining a form in this world. And the appearance of this phenomenon also caused the tense atmosphere in the air to explode all of a sudden. Even without seeing it with his own eyes, Noah could imagine the scene in his mind. In the current school, those students who had materialized, Blaze, were running around in search of their opponents and advantageous terrain. In the New Blade Battle, the tripping twin blades that obtained an excellent result would receive the Ascension Ritual as a reward. Although he didn't know what kind of excellent result would count, he didn't need to think to know that only by defeating the other teams as much as possible would one be able to show off one's results. In order to obtain this opportunity to ascend, many students would probably go all out. It was even possible that they would choose to deal with other teams by hook or by crook. Noah didn't have the slightest interest in fighting with his classmates. After all, those students had only gone through physical strengthening training. Their combat training hadn't been thoroughly carried out yet. They only knew how to wield their blaze, without knowing a thing or two about fighting. They simply couldn't be considered opponents. If he had to say who he was interested in, Noah would only be interested in the 3 pairs of tripping twin blades. Ivanli and Julie. Tachibana and Ya. Kujuryu Totoro and Oki Hokusaki. Among the 3 pairs of tripping blades, Ivan had learned swordsmanship, Tachibana was a descendant of the famous Tachibana 18 arts, Kyuchi Totoro had learned martial arts from Kukui Totoro, and Julie seemed to have a certain degree of combat skills. Even Ya, who didn't have strong combat skills, had learned the breathing technique, which could play a certain role in battle. Therefore, Noah's fighting spirit was basically directed towards these 3 pairs of tripping blades. As for the other students, Noah had heard that there were 1 or 2 pairs of double tripping blades that were more experienced in sports. Their fighting strength was much stronger than the average student, but compared to the 3 pairs of double tripping blades that Noah noticed, there were still some shortcomings. It's been a long time since we last had a fight. After saying that, Noah closed his eyes and sensed the direction of someone's aura. Then, he chose the closest direction and walked in that direction. Hiya hiya hi. In the spacious forest, several figures rushed out from the surrounding trees and bushes. They held weapons that had tree root-like patterns on their bodies. While shouting loudly, they rushed towards a figure standing in the middle of the open space, completely surrounding that figure. Pung! Unfortunately, in the next moment, a volcanic eruption force rushed into the sky. Like a gust of wind, it attacked the figures that surrounded the figure. While the branches and leaves on the ground were blown away, it also sent the crowd of people that surrounded the figure flying. After a burst of crackling sounds, the group of students that rushed out from the bushes to attack the people in the open space all fell to the ground. They didn't even feel any pain, as if their heads were numb and they fainted. Chi. The weapons all over the ground turned into flames and dissipated. The blaze that was obtained by materializing a soul would disappear when the wielder lost consciousness. And this was also the standard used to determine the outcome of a battle between surpassers. Looking at the students that were lying on the ground, Noah, who was standing in the middle of the open space, rubbed his head and helplessly shook his head. This time, there were 3 pairs of tripping dual blades that attacked at the same time. Along the way, Noah had already defeated 4 pairs of tripping dual blades. Among these 4 pairs of tripping dual blades, some chose to face Noah head-on, some chose to sneak attack, Some used other methods, and some directly rushed in front of Noah and were directly knocked down by Noah. Noah didn't think that there would be people that chose to team up. However, it could still be considered as a method. Whoosh! Just as he was thinking this, a figure suddenly broke through the air and rushed behind Noah. The sharp weapon in the figure's hand turned into a black shadow and was mercilessly thrown in the direction of Noah. The gleaming sharp weapon tore through the air, bringing with it a sharp wind, and directly smashed down on Noah, who was in front of him. However, when the sharp weapon was less than 10 centimeters away from Noah's head, Noah's body immediately became like a leaf blown by the wind. He lightly floated along with the sharp wind and took a step back. Whoosh! The sharp weapon brought with it a powerful force, and it almost touched Noah's body as it fell. The airflow it contained blew all of Noah's hair back. Not a bad attack. With a calm appearance, Noah narrowly avoided the attack of the sharp weapon. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and his body suddenly retreated as if it was weightless. In an instant, he rushed forward with the sharp weapon in his hand, and grabbed the arm of the figure behind him. Unfortunately, the attack trajectory is too simple, and it can be easily seen through. Saying this, Noah used his strength and threw the attacker who was grabbed by the arm away. This was just a very casual movement. Therefore, the attacker adjusted his body mid-air and landed steadily on the ground. He looked at Noah with eyes full of helplessness. Sure enough, there's no way. Is it that easy? Saying this, the attacker did not lose his will to fight. Instead, he stared at Noah eagerly and raised the sharp weapon in his hand. It was a knife. It was a weapon unique to this country, the katana. As for Blaze, who was holding such a katana, his brown ponytail swayed in the air behind him. It was none other than Ivan. However, Ivanli was not the only one who came. Shah, in the woods nearby, the sound of leaves rustling could be heard, and a few trees suddenly shook. Immediately after, two figures flashed out from the side and stood on the branches of the trembling trees. They looked down at Noah, who was in the middle of the field. They were two young girls with long, straight silver hair and beautiful, jet black, long, flowing hair. She had long, straight silver hair and two headbands with bells on them. She held a pair of dual blades in her hands. It was a weapon as thin as a pair of wings that the blade soared. The young girl with long black hair was tightly holding a chain with a water droplet at the front, the iron chain. Noah had confirmed these three blaze weapons on the list. However, this was the first time he saw them with his own eyes. Oh! Looking at the three beautiful girls who were standing in a triangular formation, one on the ground and two on the tree, all of them aiming their weapons at him, Noah smiled. I didn't expect that you guys would join hands. We met on the way here. Tachibana, who was holding the iron chain, looked at Noah and pretended to smile casually. That's why we decided to form the alliance against Noah. Although Tachibana and I wanted to fight you one-on-one, as expected, we should join hands this time. Ivan revealed a sly expression. After all, we don't want to lose too badly. Yeah, Julie also raised her blade sword, her eyes full of seriousness. Because Noah is very strong. After saying this, the three girls suddenly looked at each other, and all of them took a step forward and threw themselves at Noah. Chapter 2:14. Pung. Amidst the three low and deep voices that sounded in unison, the two delicate figures standing on the tree branches gently pressed against the tree branches, transforming into black shadows that rushed down like bats hunting for their prey in the dark night. The only one standing on the ground, Ivanli, also flashed out in a short moment, like a meteor, directly in front of Noah. Noah raised his eyebrows when he saw that the three young ladies had all closed in on him in an instant. He suddenly clenched his fist tightly, and with a twist of his elbow, a whirlpool-like airflow rapidly agglomerated on Noah's fist. He viciously smashed it down on Ivan's figure, who had appeared in front of him first. The sharp wind contained in the fist directly tore through the air. Feeling the sharp sound of the wind breaking from the top of his head, although Ivanli's face changed, he did not lose his calmness. He suddenly raised his arm, and the katana in his hand immediately flashed an arc of light, and heavily chopped towards Noah's incoming fist. Blaze is a strange weapon that only causes damage to the soul, and does not cause direct damage to the human body. With such a point of view, Ivanli did not have the slightest intention of mercy, and forcefully raised his katana, and forcibly collided with Noah's incoming fist. Clang! The sharp katana directly collided with the fist, and unexpectedly, there was a sound of steel colliding with steel. Ugh! And at the intersection of the two, the powerful force that surged from Noah's fist slightly pressed Ivanli's body with the katana, making Ivanli let out a slight groan. Noah still maintained his indifference, the corner of his mouth curved, his left hand clenched into a fist, and struck out like lightning, and suddenly stopped when it was less than half a meter away from Ivanli's chest. However, Noah's fist stopped, and under the guidance of the fist, the impact of the wind on Ivanli's body did not have the slightest intention of stopping. It turned into an invisible airflow, and without a trace, rushed into Ivanli's body, and then exploded in front of Ivanli. Dong! Goo! Ivanli let out a second muffled groan, as his body was forced back a few steps by the force of the explosion. And at this time, as if to replace Ivanli's attacking position, Julie, whose speed was much faster than Orange Bar, turned into a silver shadow, and rushed towards Noah while Ivanli was retreating. However, no matter what kind of surprise attack it was, under Noah's powerful perception ability that ordinary people did not have, no matter how fast the attacker was, they could not escape Noah's perception. At that moment, Noah once again slowly clenched his fist, without the slightest fanciness, and without any technique, he raised it, and directly blasted it. It was a move without the slightest bit of fancy, but it made Julie's cute face tense up. She raised the blade in her left hand, and a cold light flashed on the blade. As Julie suddenly swung it, it cut through the air and collided with Noah's incoming fist. Ding! Following a soft sound, the already thin blade sword suddenly surged with a force like a volcanic eruption, causing Julie's sword-wielding hand to go numb. Her diving figure seemed to have been pushed away as she was sent flying backwards. On the other hand, Noah's body only trembled, but his feet did not move at all. Obviously, in a competition of pure strength, Julie's petite figure was not just a little bit weaker than Noah. However, Julie, who had stabilized her body, was like a silver wolf ambushing an ambush. With a sound of breaking wind, her feet quickly touched the ground, and her body was like a ghost, constantly flashing around Noah's body. The blade in her hands occasionally brought about a burst of brilliant sword light, creating a sharp, chong-chong sound of cutting. She danced like a storm of swords, enveloping Noah's entire body. Oh! Noah, who had not seen Julie's strength before, was slightly surprised that Julie was able to continuously attack with her sword. He did not choose to meet force with force, and instead, his feet touched the ground, and his body nimbly flashed left and right within the sword curtain, retreating. With Noah's current body strength, which was only equivalent to rank I, it was impossible for him to meet weapons like the katana and the blade head-on. The reason why he was able to meet force with force and force back the katana and blade was mainly because the blades did not directly harm the body, but only the soul. Therefore, even though Noah's use of his fist to block Ivan's katana and Julie's blade seemed very powerful, in reality, Noah really did feel that his soul was being attacked. It was as if his head had been heavily knocked, causing his vision to spin. Speaking of pain, it wasn't that painful, but it was as if one's consciousness had been disturbed, causing a feeling similar to motion sickness, which was very uncomfortable. Noah didn't want to be hit by the blaze that could deal such damage again. If that happened, he might really lose the battle. Choke. However, Julie didn't want to let Noah go. The blades in her hands were like two rotating windmills, and they fiercely chopped at Noah. Thus, the scene of a silver whirlwind of blades chasing after a pitch-black figure appeared in the vast open space. Under such circumstances, Julie's speed became faster and faster. As time passed, the silver blade whirlwind turned into a silver blade storm, slicing the leaves that landed on it into halves. However, at a certain moment, Noah's gaze suddenly focused. His body moved, and like a bolt of lightning that escaped from a storm, he flashed through the air and appeared on Julie's left. Raising his palm, Noah's hand blade carried a sharp force, and forcefully chopped at Julie's wrist, who didn't have time to react. Paw! With a smacking sound, Julie let out a small cry of pain. Her blade couldn't help but fall out of her hand, spinning and landing on the ground not far away. "You're really fast, Julie." Noah's voice drilled into Julie's ears as her eyes rippled with emotions. "Only, your attack is too light. It's too easy for others to see through it." The moment he finished speaking, Julie only saw a blur in front of her eyes. Noah, who was just on her left, spun like a top, his feet sliding in a semicircle. In front of Julie, he spun to her back. Immediately after, the hand blade in his other hand was raised, and heavily fell towards the back of Julie's neck. If she was hit, Julie was afraid that she would be the first to fall in front of Ivan and Tachibana, just like Dajia. Shio! Just as Noah's hand blade was about to land on Julie's neck, a ding-ling-ling sound was mixed with a sharp piercing sound. It rubbed against the atmosphere, and like an arrow, it fiercely shot towards Noah's direction. It was a black shadow. A black shadow formed by the iron chain. Like a viper waiting for an opportunity to move, in a breath's time, the iron chain swept in front of Noah. Noah's hand blade that was chopping towards the back of Julie's neck was completely sluggish. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and he fiercely retreated. In the next moment, the iron chain, that was faintly covered in a layer of faintly discernible flames, flashed like lightning. With a blazing wind, it descended from above and landed on the ground. Paw! Amidst the sound of a whip hitting the ground that was heavily hit by the iron chain, cracked, and a pitch-black pattern that looked like it was forcibly crushed by a tire that suddenly braked. Noah, who was retreating, subconsciously looked in the direction of the iron chain, and then he saw it. Standing on a tree trunk, Tachibana, who was pulling the end of the iron chain in his hand, shouted as he forcefully pulled back his iron chain. Now! The moment Tachibana's shout fell, a figure holding the hilt of a katana appeared behind Noah. As if waiting for Noah for a long time, he raised his katana and fiercely chopped towards Noah, who was retreating in his direction. At the same time, Julie, who was holding the blade sword in her hand, also rushed out. Her silver hair swayed, and in the blink of an eye, she rushed in front of Noah. The blade sword and Tachibana, one in front and one behind, brought about a cold arc of light, and violently chopped towards Noah's chest and back, like a pincer attack. Chapter 2:15. Clang. The fragmented blade sword and Tachi drew out a long sword light as they chopped towards Noah from the front and back. Feeling the sharp gale created by the fragmented blade sword and Tachi, which were like sharp blades pressing against his chest and back, Noah's deep and dark eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of admiration. It had only been a week since the official, double-tripping blade sword had been formed. In a situation where there wasn't enough time to start the lessons on cooperation, Ivanli and Julie were actually able to cooperate to such a degree. It was really hard to find fault with them. What was even more admirable was Tachibana. Whether it was Ivanli or Julie, although the two of them were very familiar with Tachibana, in terms of fighting, the three of them had no interaction at all. Even so, Tachibana was still able to find an opportunity to make a pincer attack for Ivanli and Julie. With such keen fighting instincts, people couldn't help but secretly praise him for being the successor of the famous Tachibana 18 arts. But what surprised Noah the most was Julie. This was because Julie clearly looked weaker than Ivan, who had learned the way of the sword, and Tachibana, who had inherited the 18 arts of orange flow, in all aspects. However, in reality, Noah could tell. Ivanli, Julie, and Tachibana. Among the three girls, Julie, who had never seriously learned martial arts, was the strongest in terms of combat strength. With just a glance, Noah could tell that Julie had never learned martial arts. But Julie's swordsmanship was completely natural. Clearly, it was the same as when Noah and Alusha first learned swordsmanship. She had completely relied on herself to figure out her swordsmanship. To put it bluntly, other than Kyujuju Turyu and Oki Hokusaki, among the first years, Ivanli, Julie, and Tachibana had the strongest fighting strength. Of course, this didn't include Noah. No matter how good the three girls' coordination was, or how strong their fighting strength was, when faced with Noah, who had extraordinary perceptive abilities, combat experience, and fighting skills, they could only nurse a grievance. Suppressing the admiration for the three girls in his heart, Noah reached out a hand and pressed it on his chest. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar, who were standing on a tree trunk not far away, narrowed their eyes at the same time. Wang. Shortly after, a white star pattern spun and expanded from Noah's chest and imprinted itself on Noah's chest. Bang! Scorching flames erupted from within and spread out in all directions. Blazing Fong. Following its owner's call, a revolver with white markings appeared from the blazing flames and was held in Noah's hand. Then, Noah, who was holding the revolver tightly, suddenly waved his hand around. Who? With a muffled sound of wind, a pitch-black arc flashed in the surroundings, solidly colliding with the incoming katana and katana. Clang! Amidst the sound of metal clashing, they collided with the black arcs of the katana and the katana, creating a burst of bright sparks on the sharp edges of the two blaze weapons. Clang! Unfortunately, the sparks flashed for less than 2 seconds before the katana and katana that collided with the pitch-black arc were bounced back by a huge force. Goo! Ivanli and Julie, who were attacking Noah from both sides, had a look of discomfort on their faces as their bodies were also bounced back. On a tree trunk not far away, Orange Bar, who was watching Ivanli and Julie's pincer attack being neutralized, bit his lip. With a k'chi sound, the iron chain in his hand turned into a black shadow and shot toward Noah's direction. Bang! However, almost at the same time, in the midst of a loud gunshot, a pitch-black bullet pierced through the air and heavily collided with the water droplets at the tip of the iron chain. Clang! The pitch-black bullet and the water droplets with the iron chain bounced off each other in the midst of the sound of collision. Wah! On the tree trunk, Orange Bar sucked in a breath of cold air. Ha! At this time, Ivan and Julie, who had stabilized their retreating figures, once again charged forward. Holding their own blaze, they let out a shout. Their katana and fragmented blade emitted a cold aura as they waved their swords in the air, covering Noah's direction. Noah, who was standing still, had a flash of light in his eyes. He held the revolver tightly, and the body of the revolver danced out at an extremely fast speed. It once again turned into a circle of pitch-black arcs, and fiercely collided with the continuous sword curtain created by the katana and katana. Bang! The continuous sword curtain was suddenly directly dispersed by the pitch-black arc that violently expanded. Dong! The shockwave spread out, and Ivanli and Julie, who were at the center of the shockwave, were shocked by the sudden burst of power from the katana and katana in their hands, causing them to take 2 steps back. 1 against 3. Moreover, the 3 people he was fighting against were all first-year students who had outstanding battle prowess and were even among the best. Noah still didn't show any signs of being defeated. After 2 weeks, Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar finally saw with their own eyes how strong Noah was when he used the strength of a normal person to defeat a rank 3 school teacher. What's wrong? Noah, who was holding a revolver named Blaze, didn't point the gun at the 3 girls. Instead, he let out a provocative laugh. Is this the end? Ivan and Julie, who had retreated to a distance of 10 meters away from Noah, panted heavily. However, they still pointed their blaze at Noah from afar. It's not going to end so easily. Orange Bar was the one who shouted this. Yeah. As if in response to Orange Bar's call, a rumbling sound suddenly rang out beside Noah. Bang! A huge tree was smashed to pieces. Behind the huge tree, the figure that rushed out from the scattered pieces of wood was the girl with a weak personality but a beautiful figure. If someone were to see her right now, they would definitely not believe that she was the girl who had fainted during the physical enhancement class. Because, at this very moment, this delicate girl was holding a huge assault spear in her hand, the cavalry spear. As its name suggested, it was a spear that was supposed to be used by knights on horseback. However, right now, Ye had used her super-enhanced arm strength as a surpasser to hold it tightly and charge forward. Ye had once said that if she wanted to use her blaze, it would require a lot of stamina. It was precisely because Ye's blaze was such a huge cavalry spear that she needed to quickly increase her stamina, otherwise, she wouldn't be able to use it at all. And now, the girl's hard work over this period of time had indeed turned into the power of the blaze in her hand. Against the terrifying oppressive wind that made people's ears ring, it directly charged forward and violently rushed in front of Noah. His gaze focused, Noah suddenly raised the revolver in his hand, and very accurately blocked the tip of the cavalry spear that was suddenly thrusting towards him. In the next second, the crazily thrusting cavalry spear violently stabbed into the body of the revolver that was blocking. Clang! A violent and crisp sound of collision rang out, and the impact turned into a storm with irresistible force, cutting through the ground and attacking in all directions. Screech! Amidst the shrill sound that made people want to cover their ears, the impact of the impact also madly flashed from the body of the revolver and the tip of the cavalry spear that came into contact with each other. Noah's expression changed for the first time. From the revolver, a wave of violent energy that made people unable to help but suspect passed through the body of the revolver and attacked Noah's body, causing Noah's arm to feel a little numb. Woo woo woo. Ye struggled to stand still, and used all her strength to push the cavalry spear in her hand. She closed her eyes tightly, and poured all her strength into this attack, venting it on Noah's body. The body of the revolver let out a creaking sound. Her feet were slightly lifted off the ground because of the pressure. Kacha! The ground that Noah stepped on cracked with a sound that made people's scalp numb. The hand holding the spear gradually lost feeling, and Noah's gaze towards the charging Ye also changed. Chapter 2:16. Who? A gentle breeze blew through the forest, the air, and the open space that had become full of potholes. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar, who were in a triangular formation, each held their own blaze. They looked at the center of the field and fell into a state of speechlessness. In the center of the field, Ye, who was holding a huge cavalry spear, sat on the ground and panted heavily. His face was slightly pale, and he looked like he was about to be burnt out. Needless to say, Ye's physical strength had been greatly consumed by using the huge cavalry spear. He was now at the point where he could not stand up. Noah stood in front of Ye, holding the revolver blaze in his hand. He then looked at his hand that had become numb from blocking Ye's attack. It was even slightly trembling. After a while, he suddenly laughed. Isn't this quite powerful? Ye, who was panting heavily, looked at Noah in a daze. Although it has a weakness that requires a large amount of stamina to use, once you have sufficient stamina and arm strength to wield it, in terms of strength, your blaze is very likely to be the strongest amongst all the blaze. Noah extended his hand, which had just stopped trembling, in front of Ye. With such a powerful blaze, you still say that you are useless. You will be punished by the heavens. Ye stared blankly at the gentle smile on Noah's face that could not be stopped. Hearing Noah's words that sounded like he agreed with her, Ye's charming face turned slightly red. Her heartbeat also rapidly accelerated. She involuntarily reached out her hand and placed it on Noah's hand. Noah pulled slightly and pulled Ye up. Continue to work hard. Holding Ye's soft little hand, Noah said this sentence from the bottom of his heart. Otherwise, even the soul in your hand will not be able to stand it. Ye lightly nodded her head, then immediately nodded with force. I will work hard. Noah suddenly smiled. Seeing that the tense atmosphere from before had completely dissipated due to Noah and Ye's inexplicably warm conversation, Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar each showed different expressions. Ivanli let out a long sigh and narrowed his eyes. Julie's hand that was holding the sword lowered. Her deep red eyes revealed an envious expression. As for Orange Bar, she stared straight at Noah and Yez tightly held hands. Her charming face, like her tripping double blade, also slightly blushed, and she deliberately coughed. That, from all aspects, young men and women should not hold hands so intimately. It's about time to let go, right? Only then did Noah and Nya react. They quickly let go of their hands at the same time and even put some distance between them. It's done. Noah adjusted his emotions, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He held the revolver and twirled it around. Do you want to continue fighting? Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Nya looked at each other. Just as Ivanli and Orange Bar took a step forward and were about to say something to Noah, an extremely shrill scream resounded through the entire forest. The four girls present immediately felt their chests tighten, and their charming faces suddenly changed color. What? Nya, who was the most timid, had already hidden behind Orange Bar. What was that sound just now? Was someone defeated? Ivanli's face was also filled with shock. But that sound is too tragic. That did not sound like the cry of someone who was defeated in a normal battle. That cry was like the cry of someone who was on the verge of death. It contained indelible pain. Noah raised his head and closed his eyes. After sensing for a while, he suddenly opened them and looked in a direction not far away. Immediately, Noah crouched, and his body rushed forward like a cheetah. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the forest. Noah. Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, and Nya called out at the same time, and immediately chased after him without hesitation. Noah, who was rushing forward, tightly held the revolver in his hand, and his eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. Noah was certain that the scream just now was not as simple as being attacked by the soul-damaging blaze. Indeed, when being attacked by the blaze, the person who was hit would feel pain for a moment, but that was only for a moment, and it was a very small feeling. Otherwise, Noah would not have used his hands to block Ivanli and Julie's blaze. Thus, Noah, who had personally experienced the effects of the blaze, could confirm that although the feeling of being hit by the blaze was very uncomfortable, it was only uncomfortable. It was not to the extent that it would cause one to scream so miserably. In that case, what was the shriek just now? With this question in mind, Noah increased his speed, and not long after, the scene before him suddenly opened up. A square with a fountain in the middle appeared in front of Noah. And in the middle of the square, several people stood there. First, there were two students wearing the school's uniform. The tall and short figures were Kyujuju Totoro and Oki Totoro, whom Noah recognized. However, at this time, Oki Totoro was lying on the ground with wounds all over her body, and blood was still flowing out from her wounds. Kyujuju Totoro hugged Oki Totoro, and his face was filled with anger as he looked in front of him. In front of Kyujuju Totoro, a figure stood there. It was the figure of a girl wearing a maid outfit with rabbit ears on her head. Impressively, it was Teacher Little Rabbit. However, what made Noah's eyes constrict was that the usually cute and spoiled Teacher Little Rabbit was actually holding a huge sword in her hand. The blade was full of sawtooth, and at a glance, one could tell that the sword had amazing lethality, Fong sword. Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped. Teacher Little Rabbit, who was holding the Fong sword in her hand, seemed to have heard a strange sound. She turned around and looked in the direction of Noah. When she saw that it was Noah, her eyes lit up, and her face was filled with excitement as she shouted. Wow! I finally found you. My dear, exception. The voice was still the same voice that was filled with innocence. The tone was still the same sweet and spoiled tone. However, at this moment, Teacher Little Rabbit no longer gave off the feeling of being harmless. Instead, she was like the Fong sword in her hand, emitting a terrifying aura that made people's hair stand on end. Noah was familiar with this aura. It was called Murderous Aura. Hey, can you wait for me over there for a while? Teacher Little Rabbit first smiled sweetly, and then her temperament suddenly changed, and the expression on her face became ferocious. Wait until I get rid of this guy who is in the way first. With a completely different rough tone compared to before, Teacher Little Rabbit raised the Pfong sword in her hand and fiercely slashed at Oki Totoro, who was covered in wounds. Blaze! At this moment, Ninefold Totoro, who was holding Oki Totoro tightly, shouted angrily. Bang! Scorching flames and gorgeous star patterns appeared at the same time, covering Ninefold Totoro's body. Then, the Pfong sword that suddenly fell heavily collided with a heavy piece of iron that protruded from the flames. Clang! In the sound of metal colliding, the flames were cut open by the Pfong sword, and the scene inside was exposed to the air. The scene that appeared in front of him made Noah completely stunned, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. He saw that on Ninefold Totoro's arm that was tightly protecting Oki Totoro, there was a piece of iron that looked like a beast's claw on it. Ninefold Totoro lifted it up and blocked the Pfong sword that was coming down. A piece of iron that looked like a beast's claw shield. In the case where the blaze could only materialize as a weapon, it was absolutely impossible for the blaze to appear as a defensive tool. That was Ninefold Totoro's blaze. Ha 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 ha. Teacher Little Rabbit let out a fanatical laugh. You finally took it out? Ability. Noah, who had a blaze that shouldn't be a complicated revolver, was an exception. Ninefold Totoro, who had shield that shouldn't be a defensive tool, was an ability. The two of them were the same kind. Chapter 217. Bang! With a dull thud, Tsukujiri Bunny threw out a kick that landed heavily on Kyujuju Totoro's body. Goo! Kyujuju Totoro carried Oki and flew backwards. His body drew a parabola and smashed into the ground not far away. Ha, you're too weak. Tsukujiri Bunny put the Pfong sword on his shoulder with a sadistic smile on his face. Undoubtedly, you're the same kind. That exception is so strong, but you're so weak. Do you really have a supernatural ability? Kyujuju Totoro's face was filled with pain. He covered his abdomen with one hand, while the other hand covered with a shield protected Oki, who was lying on the ground with wounds all over her body. He stared at Tsukujiri Bunny. At this time, the sound of chaotic footsteps could be heard. On the other side of the forest, Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Ya quickly ran over. When they saw the scene, they froze on the spot and revealed a blank expression. Tsukujiri-sensei. Tachaba, who had a keen intuition, was the first to react. He stared straight at Tsukujiri Bunny. What's going on? Oh, so scary, so scary. Tsukujiri Bunny patted his chest pretentiously. Then, as if he was amused by himself, he violently laughed out loud. As you can see, I'm dealing with some special people. Dealing with? Special people? Ivanli looked like he couldn't react. What do you mean? Well, just think of it as my job. Just think of it as the job of some people who can't bear to see others being too good and need to deal with some students who have a better future. Tsukujiri Rabbit carried the Pfong sword, and the corner of his mouth curved up into an evil smile. By the way, you're all on my target list. As soon as he said this, the four girls felt a chill run down their spines. Ivanli, Tachaba, and Ya, except for Julie, more or less revealed a look of fear. Under such circumstances, Noah took a step forward and stood in front of the group of young ladies. His gaze was like an arrow, shooting towards Tsukini Bunny. No. More accurately, it should be said that he shot towards the Pfong sword in Tsukujiri Bunny's hand. You used the blaze in your hand to cut Oki into that state, right? Noah laughed mockingly. What, blaze, can only damage a person's soul? That's a lie. From the beginning, Noah was strange that the blaze couldn't damage a person's body, but it could only damage a person's soul. If blaze could only damage a person's soul, then why could it damage the surrounding environment? That didn't make sense. Faced with Noah's question, Tsukujiri Bunny shook her head exaggeratedly. No, no, no. Blaze, indeed, only damages a person's soul. That's the truth. But Tsukujiri Bunny raised a finger, as if he felt joy from the bottom of his heart, revealing a joyful expression. Once the user of the blaze carries killing intent, malice, hostility, and the like, and has a strong desire to harm others, that person's soul will become a weapon. Isn't this a very natural thing? Okay. Let's stop asking questions about the little brats here. She slowly raised her gaze and looked at Noah, who was looking straight at her. Tsukujiri Bunny revealed a malicious smile. I've been specially allowed to use a bit of my true ability to deal with you. Exception, let me see if you can use the power of level 1 to defeat me. As soon as he finished speaking, Tsukujiri Bunny's body turned into a blurry shadow, dragging the huge Fong sword. With a fierce momentum, he rushed towards Noah amidst the group of girls' cries of surprise. The Fong sword in his hand cut through the air like a flash of black lightning, carrying a fierce wind that caused the atmosphere to fluctuate. Tsukujiri Bunny had a cruel smile on his face as he fiercely chopped down at Noah in front of him. The strength of the force was so strong that even the air under the sword was completely compressed. The low sonic boom was like the sound of an underground explosion, so oppressive that it was frightening. Noah's uniform was pressed tightly against his skin by the incoming strong wind. His eyes were fixed on the Fong sword that was getting closer and closer. When it was less than 20 centimeters away from his head, Noah's feet turned to the left and suddenly moved. Hoo! The Fong sword fell with a loud bang, and with an extremely thrilling distance, it brushed past Noah's shoulder and fell to the air. Ha! As expected, you're different from those little brats. Exception. Undoubtedly, the attack fell to the air. However, Tsukujiri Bunny was not shocked, but happy instead. His ear-piercing laughter resounded in the surroundings. However, you better not treat me as the one kneeling at your feet who is about to enter the coffin and is still only a rank 3 trash. As he said this, Tsukujiri Bunny's left hand slightly twisted, and heavily slapped the body of his Fong sword. Pung! The seemingly casual slap caused the Fong sword that fell to the air to be driven by a powerful force. It fiercely rotated, and like a cruel electric saw that cut life, it stirred up a cold wind, and mercilessly cut towards Noah who was close at hand. Clang! The sound of steel colliding with steel immediately rang out, and violent sparks burst out. Noah did not know when, but his own revolver was placed horizontally at his side, and it fiercely collided with the Fong sword that was like a windmill cutting towards him. The sparks that were ignited lit up Noah's indifferent face, and caused Noah's entire aura to become ice cold at this moment. In the next moment, Noah suddenly clenched his fist, and like a heavy hammer, his arm shook, and mixed with a shock wind, he heavily smashed towards the chest of Tsukujiri Bunny who was approaching in front of him. You actually attacked a young girl's chest? How ungentlemanly. Tsukujiri Bunny's malicious laughter still echoed, but he did not retreat, and instead advanced. His left hand was also tightly clenched into a fist, and the strength of his entire body rapidly condensed on his fist. Soon after, he fiercely struck out, and it just so happened to collide with the fist that was smashing towards him. Pung! The two fists, one big and one small, fiercely collided, and a deep sonic boom suddenly echoed at the point of contact. A ripple that caused the air to fluctuate rapidly, and spread out in all directions. Thump thump. The force that could not be ignored suddenly hit Noah's body, causing Noah's chest to feel stuffy. His footsteps retreated step by step amidst the heavy stomping sounds. Every step caused a footprint full of cracks to appear on the extremely hard ground. After continuously retreating for a few steps, Noah's throat let out a low groan. His right foot fiercely stomped, and the hard ground where he landed instantly shattered into extremely small fragments, and his body stabilized. Feeling the slight pain from his hand, Noah raised his head with a slightly dignified expression, and looked at Tsukujiri Bunny who had only taken a small step back, and his brows tightly knitted together. In a head-on collision, Tsukujiri Bunny's strength was almost a level higher than Noah's. Needless to say, to be able to become a teacher of Haoling Academy, Tsukujiri Bunny must at least be the same as Dajia, rank 3. And judging from his words, it seemed that Dajia's strength was not even as strong as Tsukujiri Bunny. To fight with an opponent who surpassed him in all aspects, was tyrannical in strength, and had rich combat experience, a head-on collision was definitely the most irrational thing to do. Of course, although it sounded complicated, in fact, the collision between Noah and Sakujiri Bunny had only started in the blink of an eye, and ended abruptly in a moment. Therefore, only when the two separated did the rest of the people present react. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar raised the blaze in their hands at the same time, and together with Noah, they stared closely at Sakujiri Bunny. Their faces were serious, and also nervous. Ya, on the other hand, was slightly at a loss as to what to do, and for a moment, she did not know what to do. Ninefold Tulu hugged Kue Hokusaki and carried his shield, and his face was full of anger. Ha 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 ha. Only Tsukujiri Bunny's wild laughter echoed in the surroundings. Chapter 218. Amidst the piercing sound, the moonlit glass hair, whose entire body was covered by a dense airflow, shot out like an arrow. Its speed was so fast that the vigilant Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, Nine-Layer Totoro, and the others could only see a blurry shadow darting out. Under such circumstances, the moonlit glass hair laughed joyfully and directly raised the toothed sword in its hand. It actually ignored the others present and rushed in front of Noah, swung its arm, and mercilessly chopped down at Noah. Clang! The ferocious, toothed sword chopped down like lightning, but was blocked by the revolver that was much smaller than it was. Chi chi chi! Immediately, the violent collision produced intense sparks, and a small shockwave spread out in all directions. However, this stalemate did not last long. In the next moment, Noah's face was tense, and the hand holding the revolver could not help but tremble. You actually dare to fight a high-level opponent head-on. You, exception, really don't know what's good for you. The moonlit glass hair sneered, and the toothed sword in its hand swung fiercely at Noah in front of it. The strong wind brought by the sword directly tore through the air, causing the sharp sound of the wind breaking to hurt people's eardrums. Clang clang clang. At this moment, the moonlit glass hair seemed to have transformed into an existence purely for the sake of venting its violence. In the midst of its violent laughter, the toothed sword in its hand continuously chopped out in an extremely short period of time. Every chop was extremely precise on a point of the revolver that Noah used to block, causing the crisp sound of the collision to almost condense into one sound, extremely orderly. Noah, who could only passively endure the moonlit glass hair's violent attacks, could only hold the revolver and retreat while trying his best to block every single one of the moonlit glass hair's attacks. The hand holding the revolver had long been numbed by the huge force transmitted from the toothed sword, causing Noah's expression to become more and more serious. Noah, of course, knew that it was a very foolish thing to fight against an opponent whose rank was higher than his by so much. However, unlike Tsukitsun Ruby's speed, agility, reflexes, and combat ability were far superior. In this way, even if Noah could rely on his outstanding sensing ability to preemptively predict the Moonglass Rabbit's attack, his rank body would not be able to react in time after restriction. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible for him to use his amazing predictive ability to defend and dodge skillfully like he did against Daisuke, and then find an opportunity to deal a decisive blow. And this also told Noah. The Moonlight Glass Rabbit was definitely not as simple as rank 3. Otherwise, Noah, who only had the strength of an ordinary person, could deal with the rank 3 Noah. Now that he was at rank I, it was impossible for him to not be able to deal with the Moonlight Glass Rabbit's attack. Therefore, the Moonlit Glass Rabbit was definitely not just rank 3, it was at least rank 4. Furthermore, there was a possibility that, what? Are you curious about what my rank is? It doesn't matter if I tell you. Tsukitsun Robbie seemed to be able to see through Noah's thoughts under his dangerous face. While continuing to attack, he suddenly smiled. My rank is V. Noah's eyes tightened. Rank V. Tsukitsun Robbie was actually a rank V surpasser. So, didn't I tell you? Saying such a sentence, Tsukitsun Robbie raised the Fong sword in his hand higher than ever before, and even stopped as if he was accumulating power. Don't treat me as the kind of trash that can only stop at rank 3 for the rest of my life. As soon as his voice fell, the Fang sword in Sukatsun Ruby's hand was like a black lightning bolt that fell from the sky, causing a terrifying sonic boom, dragging a long light as it suddenly slashed down. Looking at the momentum of this attack, Noah knew. With his current rank-8 strength, if he blocked it, his body would definitely be cut in half along with the revolver. This attack could not be taken head-on. However, even with Noah's current rank-8 speed, he was still unable to dodge this attack. At that moment, Noah could only grit his teeth, following the momentum of the revolver in his hand, aiming the revolver muzzle forward, and pulling the trigger with all his might. Bang! Amidst the loud gunshot, the bullet that contained a terrifying power struck forward while the revolver muzzle spat out sparks. The moment he pulled the trigger, Noah's body leaped slightly, letting his body gently leave the ground, appearing to be in a slightly floating state. Thus, under the effect of the revolver, that was more powerful than an anti-tank sniper rifle's huge recoil, the slightly floating Noah's body fiercely retreated back a distance. Whoo! Almost at the same time, the unparalleled Fang sword suddenly slashed down, sweeping past Noah's original position and landing on the ground. Bang! Amidst the muffled sound, the hard ground was directly split by the Fang sword. With an explosion, a huge crack was blasted open. Kacha, Noah, who had stabilized his body, directly raised the revolver in his hand and aimed at the face of Moonlit Glass Rabbit that was slashing down with the sword. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! The pitch-black bullet shot out, piercing through the air, and flew straight towards Moonlit Glass Rabbit's face that was close at hand. The bullet that was constantly enlarging in Moonlit Glass Rabbit's eyes made her slowly shrink her pupils, and she forcefully turned her head. Shio! The bullet that did not lose its momentum brushed past Moonlit Glass Rabbit's cheek, and swept to the back. Duh! At the same time, Noah forcefully tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and his body quickly retreated, creating a slight distance between him and Moonlit Glass Rabbit. Looking at Moonlit Glass Rabbit's gaze, a trace of a troublesome expression appeared. Can you see the trajectory of the bullet at such a close distance? Yu Jianli too touched her cheek. Because the bullet just brushed past her, there was already a wound that was emitting steam, and blood was flowing out. There's nothing to be surprised about. As long as you reach level 4, you can see the trajectory of the bullet, and I'm level V. Unless you directly put the gun to my head, don't even think about using the treasure in your hand to hit me. Moonlit Glass Rabbit licked the blood on her hand into her mouth, and smiled tyrannically. Speaking of which, since your bullet brushed past my face, this means that you have the intention to kill me, right? Hearing this, Noah smiled indifferently. Or do you think that for an opponent who wants to kill me, I should be magnanimous and forgive the opponent with the awareness that I may lose my life at any time? You're really interesting. Exception. Moonlit Glass Rabbit laughed loudly. That's right. That's how a battle should be. Looking at Moonlit Glass Rabbit's wild laughter, Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Ninefold Totoro, who couldn't find a chance to intervene, could only grit their teeth and nervously stay where they were. Even Noah, who had extraordinary perception ability, almost couldn't keep up with Moonlit Glass Rabbit's movements, and was forced to meet force with force. Ivanli, Julie, and the others, even though many of them had combat experience, in a situation where all of them were level 1, they could only stare helplessly. Little did they know that when the group of onlookers could only stare helplessly, Moonlit Glass Rabbit's gaze glanced over. But I also have a job to do. So, before the fight, it's better to get rid of the guy who's in the way first. Saying this, Uganli Rabbit suddenly shook his arm without any warning. Kacha! A bone-chilling mechanical cracking sound suddenly came from Moonlit Glass Rabbit's Fang sword. Immediately after, the toothed sword in Yu Jianli Tu's hand broke and turned into pieces of blades. Like the scales of a snake, they separated from each other. Seeing this, Noah's mind shook. Moonlit Glass Rabbit's blaze was not a Fang sword at all. It was a snake belly sword that could be used as a long-distance attack, like a long whip. In the next moment, Moonlit Glass Rabbit fiercely waved the sword in her hand. Whoosh! The separated, snake belly sword immediately turned into a blurry black shadow, and like a whip, it violently lashed out, cutting through the air, and with the sound of wind breaking, it swept in the direction of the group of onlookers. Chapter 219. Rank I against Rank V. No matter how you look at it, there is no chance of winning. Perhaps, there is no way to see the difference between the two ranks just by looking at it, but if you apply the Daybreak Star Pattern's multiplication method, then the difference is much clearer. Rank I enhancement is 10. Rank 2 enhancement is 20. Rank 3 enhancement is 30. Rank 4 enhancement is 40. As for the enhancement level of level V, it was naturally 50. If we assume that Noah and Tsukuyomi's strength level is 1, after their respective Daybreak Star Pattern enhancement, the rank I in Noah is 10, and the rank V, Tsukuyomi is 50, the difference between the strength of the two is more than 5 times. This is the calculation of the lowest boundary. After all, Noah really did use his ability to suppress his strength to the level of an ordinary level I, which was a strength of 10. And Tsukuyomi need not think about it. To be able to become a teacher of this school, this person's strength level is definitely not 1, at least 5. Under the condition that his strength level is 5, after the Daybreak Star Pattern multiplied by 50 enhancement of rank V, Tsukuyomi's final strength is 250, which is more than 25 times that of the ordinary rank I strength of 10 Noah. Of course, this is only the result calculated from the strength level of Noah and Tsukuyomi. How much of the two people's true strength is also taken into account the battle experience, battle techniques, and the advantages of the blaze, etc. Whether it is battle experience or battle techniques, Tsukuyomi is far superior to Daisuke. Even if he is not as good as Noah himself, and does not have Noah's cheat-like, sensory ability, but overall, Noah's strength can only barely contend with Tsukuyomi, and this is under the situation where he has the advantage of the blaze. Therefore, after seeing how much power the Moonlight Glass Rabbit had at rank V, Noah had the idea of releasing his power. As long as he could release his strength to the level of rank 3, Noah had the confidence to defeat the rank V Moonlit Glass Hare with the help of his superior blaze and revolver. However, that was under the condition that the power that Yu Jianli Rabbit had displayed earlier was all that she had. She had not hidden anything at all. Unfortunately, Yu Jianli Rabbit still had a trick up her sleeve. Snake Belly Sword. This was the Moonlit Glass Rabbit's true blaze. Who? Looking at the snake belly sword that was like a whip whipping towards Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Ninefold Totoro who couldn't react in time, Noah's mind was instantly filled with a warm current. Noah did not even have the time to release the power of limit. He lowered his body and tried his best to rush towards the direction of the girls and Ninefold Totoro. However, with Noah's current rank I speed, it was impossible for him to catch up to Tsukuyomi's attack that came without warning. Unless he could catch up to the speed of the snake belly sword attack, the girls and Ninefold Totoro would definitely be seriously injured or even killed by this attack. Speed. Speed that could catch up. Speed. Noah, whose heart was filled with desire, unintentionally looked towards the direction of Ninefold Totoro. His mind immediately flashed back to the last time he fought with her during the physical enhancement training course. It was the predecessor of Noah's improved Annihilation Strike that Ninefold Totoro used. It had terrifying power and was able to send out a shockwave with a sure-kill punch. With the scene of using Annihilation Strike appearing in his mind, Noah immediately tensed up his body and mobilized all the power in his body. However, Noah did not gather all the power in his body into his hands, nor did he assume a posture like a bow. Instead, he abruptly stepped out and gathered all the power in his body into his feet. The scene of using Annihilation Strike reappeared once again. But this time, the gorgeous golden light that emerged from the space did not converge on the user's fist. Instead, It followed Noah's movement of gathering all the power in his body into his feet and converged below Noah's feet. Immediately, Noah's feet seemed to have stepped on a vortex of brilliance and resolutely landed on the ground. Pung! Just like when using Annihilation Strike, a terrifying shockwave exploded under Noah's feet and blasted a crater in the ground. The shockwave that exploded under his feet turned into an extremely terrifying pushing force that fiercely pushed Noah away. In the next moment, with a thunderous sound, Noah's figure turned into a meteor-like light shadow. With a flash, he appeared beside the group of girls and ninefold Totoro. Like a blooming brilliance, he covered the group of people. It was so sudden. When the meteor-like light shadow flew over and covered the group of people who were the target of Yu Jianli Rabbit's attack all disappeared in place. Whoosh! The snake belly sword that violently attacked cut through the air, streaked across the space, and directly landed in the air. Yu Jianli Rabbit, who was holding the snake belly sword that was less than 1/10 of its original strength, slowly withdrew her smile and then looked in another direction. There, Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, ninefold Totoro and the others who were still unable to react fell to the ground. As if they finally understood what had happened, they looked in front of them with a shocked expression. And only a step away from them, Noah, who was kneeling on the ground with one knee, lowered his head. A burst of brilliant brilliance spread under his feet and slowly dissipated into the air. Clang! Yu Jianli Rabbit raised the snake belly sword that was only left with the hilt in her hand. The scale-like blade that extended out like a whip immediately reassembled according to a regular trajectory. Then, Yu Jianli Rabbit looked at Noah and said in a deep voice, "What was that just now? Do you want to know?" Noah raised his head and looked at Yu Jianli Rabbit's eyes. His dark pupils flickered with a strange expression. "Although it's a skill that I just learned, you can call it leap." The ultimate goal of Annihilation Strike was to create a shockwave with terrifying power. Using the principle of Annihilation Strike, the shockwave would be condensed and spread out. Then it would explode under the feet to form a thrust, allowing the user to obtain a skill that could be called Terrifying Speed Leap. In a situation where his companions were in danger, Noah, whose strength had been limited, was able to comprehend such a skill. This was also a harvest that could only be achieved under the indirect influence of the limit ability. Otherwise, Noah, who had released his true strength, would have wanted to save his companions easily. It was absolutely impossible for him to encounter a similar crisis and obtain such a new comprehension in the midst of a crisis. Yu Jianli Rabbit seemed to have also seen that the leap that Noah spoke of was an ability that he had just learned. After staring at Noah for a while, she suddenly sighed. "You really aren't an ordinary person, exception." Saying such a sentence, Yu Jianli Rabbit slowly retreated, but her gaze remained on Noah's body. "Although I received the instruction to use my true strength if I faced you, I originally thought that using the true usage of the blaze would probably be enough. Now it seems that if I want to get rid of you, it seems that I really need to use my true strength. I'll let you see." Stopping her retreating steps, Yu Jianli Rabbit slightly raised her chin and revealed a ruthless smile on her face. "Blaze's true strength." "Blaze's true strength?" Ivanli, Julie and the others were all stunned. Noah's face slightly sank, making the ruthless smile on Yu Jianli Rabbit's face become more and more intense. "Don't blink. Little brats." After saying that, Yu Jianli Rabbit fiercely raised the snake belly sword in her hand. The blades that were linked to it immediately extended out once again. It spun up and rotated above its master's head. Chapter 220. Amidst the vibrations in the air, the blade of the snake belly sword that soared into the sky began to connect head to tail. Like an Ouroboros biting its tail, it formed a ring and began to rotate at high speed. Wang wang. The sword ring with a diameter of more than 3 meters emitted a sharp buzzing sound, causing the surrounding air to be stirred up like muddy water, causing the air to change color. It was a dark blue color that represented death. This dark blue sword ring that represented death spun crazily while stirring up the air, creating a strong wind as it floated above its owner's head. What? What is that? The expressions of Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, Ya, 9-layer Totoro, and the others changed drastically. Let me, as your teacher, teach you a lesson. Just like holding the crazily rotating sword ring, Moonlit Glasshair raised the snake belly sword that only had its hilt left, and a ferocious smile hung on his face. Once a surpasser reaches level 4, they will be able to release the true power hidden within the blaze fang, just like mine. Amidst the wild laughter, an abnormally violent air current suddenly rippled above Moonlit Glasshair. As the violent airflow became more and more violent, traces of substantial blue ripples rippled out from the sword edge ring above the Moonlight Glass Rabbit. In the end, the ripples wrapped around the sword edge ring and began to revolve crazily. A gale emerged and swept out in all directions. The gale was so fierce that even some of the larger rocks on the ground were blown away, causing the expressions of Ivanli, Julie, and the others to change abruptly. Their faces were filled with horror. Facing such power, Noah, who was kneeling on the ground with one knee, silently stood up. His dark eyes released a rare burning desire for battle. The true power of the blaze fang you speak of. Saying this, Noah tensed up his body and took a large stride forward. Like a longbow, he clenched his fist and suddenly pulled it behind him. Let me have a look. Seeing Noah's posture, Ivanli, Julie, and 9-layer Totoro were shocked. Wang. In the next moment, the space around the fist that Noah had pulled behind him suddenly shook. Specks of dazzling golden light appeared and gathered on it. Not long after, it condensed into a golden vortex that suddenly rotated. Seeing this scene, Eugenli Rabbit's pupils instantly shrank to the size of a pinhole, but soon revealed a fanatical smile, feeling that the blood in his body was boiling at this moment. It had been a long time since Tsukujijiri Bunny had experienced this kind of blood-boiling feeling. Ha! Come on! Laughing loudly, the airflow above the Moonlight Glass Rabbit's head became more and more chaotic, and the sword ring spun even more crazily. In the end, only a faint blue ring of light could be seen floating there. Looking at the blue light that almost filled the entire arena, Noah clenched his fist even tighter. Suddenly, the whirlpool around Noah's fist became violent, causing the atmosphere to slightly distort. Let's decide the victor. Exception. Tsukujijiri Bunny's arm fiercely shook, and the snake belly sword's hilt pointed to the sky, causing the sword ring floating above to make a whooshing sound. Immediately, Tsukujijiri Bunny suddenly swung the snake belly sword's hilt down. Bite him to death. Crazy snake ring. Amidst the loud shout, the crazy snake ring floating above Tsukujijiri Bunny's head was like an erupting volcano. It trembled, and with an incomparably sharp and ear-piercing explosion and a bright blue light, it cut through the air and shot towards Noah in front of it. Caw. Wherever the blue light passed, the ground cracked inch by inch, and stirred up the air. It was mixed with the aura of death as it shot past. Noah's pitch-black pupils were almost completely covered by the blue resplendent radiance. As the target of the wild snake ring, Noah could clearly feel the terrifying power contained within the blue sword ring. With that kind of power, he believed that even if it was a building, it would definitely be cut in half. However, Noah's heart was strangely calm. He did not choose to release the power of limit, nor did he choose to dodge. Because, the victor. It will only be me. Slowly taking a step forward, the veins on Noah's arm were like wriggling little snakes. In an instant, they sharply swelled up, causing the whirlpool around his fist to suddenly expand. Send it flying. Destroy it. Almost as if in response to Noah, a burst of golden light that was of the same origin as the whirlpool around Noah's fist converged under Noah's feet. Immediately after, it suddenly exploded, shaking up a violent force, causing Noah to turn into a stream of light. With an irresistible force, it violently shot out. The distance between the gorgeous stream of light and the blue halo was instantly closed. Soon after, two terrifying attacks that seemed to be able to burn mountains and boil seas collided with each other like meteorites under the abruptly tense nerves of the group of spectators. Heaven and earth suddenly became silent. But not long after, in the center of the collision between the stream of light and the halo, a violent shockwave erupted. Bang! The silence that lasted for only a moment was completely gone. Like a catastrophe, the shockwave exploded in the center of the collision like an explosion. The terrifying shockwave seemed to be able to cross the heaven and earth, causing the atmosphere to become dry and scorching. Like a storm descending from the sky, ripples blew in all directions. Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Ya hurriedly raised their hands, subconsciously blocking in front of them, but their bodies were blown back again and again. Goo! In order to protect Kukui Hokusaki, ninefold Totoro hurriedly hugged him, but because of this, his body became unstable and was tragically directly blown away, crashing into a tree trunk at the side. And when the spectators were unable to protect themselves, in the frenzied shockwave that pervaded the entire area, a figure violently retreated from it. His figure was slightly embarrassed, and his hand was still holding the snake-belly sword that only had the hilt left. He gritted his teeth, withstood the chaotic airflow that was blowing towards him, and tried his best to stabilize his body. That was, of course, moonlit glass hair. The next moment, a sharp sound of wind breaking resounded, causing moonlit glass hair to raise his slightly embarrassed face. At the same time, the shockwave that pervaded the sky suddenly squirmed, and a figure violently rushed out from it. His figure was also extremely embarrassed. However, in a situation where even his clothes had become tattered, the existence that rushed out from the shockwave still had a pair of deep eyes rolling with scorching battle intent. He raised his fist that was still spinning with a golden vortex, and the gorgeous brilliance under his feet shook. His figure turned into a golden light, and fiercely chased after moonlit glass hair who was retreating. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of moonlit glass hair. Exception. As Yu Jianlitu's expression changed drastically and she screamed, a fierce light flashed in Noah's eyes. On his fist, a beautiful vortex of air surged crazily. It was mixed with an incomparably ferocious shockwave. Under Yu Jianlitu's shocked gaze, it heavily landed on her abdomen. Bang! A low muffled explosion that made one's heart tighten reverberated in the air above the entire square. Ugh! Receiving such a heavy blow without any defense, moonlit glass hair involuntarily let out a muffled cry. His figure was like a bird that had its wings broken, or a kite that had its string broken, as he flew backwards. Bang! In the end, moonlit glass hair fiercely smashed into the ground not far away, smashing a deep hole in the ground, stirring up thick smoke that covered the deep hole and his body. Ha! 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 Landing from mid-air, Noah, who stood steadily on the ground, his chest undulating as he panted heavily. His fist that had dispersed the vortex of air seeped out blood, dripping onto the ground. His arm was still trembling. Obviously, in the clash with the crazy snake ring, just now, Noah, who had exhausted all his strength to use the annihilation strike, had also suffered quite a bit of damage. However, for a rank I to challenge a rank V and only receive this amount of damage, it was already something worth celebrating. Not far away, Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, Ya, 9 Layers Totoro and the others looked at the constantly panting Noah, as if they had yet to wake up from the frightening collision just now, and did not speak for a long time. Chapter 221. At night, in the school's healthcare room, Noah, who was sitting on the hospital bed, stretched out his hand, which was slightly injured after using Annihilation Strike against Tsukujiri Bunny's wild snake ring. Blood was still seeping out of his hand. He held it flat in front of him. In front of Noah, Ivan used a bandage to wrap around Noah's outstretched hand, bandaging Noah's hand until only his fingers were exposed. The palm and the back of his hand were all wrapped under the bandage. After a while, he finished. Ivan seemed to have never done such a job before. He held Noah's bandaged hand and looked back and forth. Is this all right? It's not a big injury, there's no need to wrap it so carefully. Noah took back his hand and moved his palm slightly. What's more, after being strengthened by the Daybreak Star pattern, the recovery ability is also very amazing. This kind of injury should be healed in a few days, right? In fact, if Noah did not use the limit ability to suppress all his abilities, no matter how serious the injury, it would be healed in an instant. After all, Noah's body has already been strengthened by who knows how many times the protozoa virus has strengthened his body. Even if it's a broken hand or a broken leg, it may be able to recover. Therefore, for Noah, this kind of injury, which was equivalent to a broken skin, was really nothing. But Noah raised his other hand and looked at the bandage wrapped around the other hand, except for the 5 fingers, and laughed bitterly. This way, both of my hands are wrapped in bandages. People who don't know will think that I'm seriously injured. The bandage on his left hand was to cover up the scars from when he was a child. At that time, Noah had not been strengthened by the protozoa virus. Therefore, unless Noah directly cut off all the scars on his left hand, the scars would not disappear even if he released his body's regenerative ability. Fortunately, the injury on his right hand was not to the point where it would leave a scar. It should be healed in a few days. Noah. Julie approached, her deep red eyes filled with concern. Are you okay? It's just a small wound. Noah shook his head and rubbed Julie's head lovingly with his bandaged hand. Don't worry. Yeah, I can't believe you can still be so carefree. Ivan sighed. Don't forget, we were almost killed. Ivanli's words caused the atmosphere in the room to become heavy. After defeating the moonlit glass rabbit, 9-layer Torrance decided to hand the opponent over to the academy and leave with the moonlit glass rabbit. Kue Tokusaki was entrusted to Noah's group by the 9-fold Tokusatsu. She was brought to the infirmary by Noah's group. Now, she was lying on another bed with bandages all over her body. Therefore, in the infirmary, other than 9-layer Torrance who brought the moonlit glass rabbit to the academy, the rest of the people who were present were here. Including Noah who came to bandage the wound on his hand, Ivanli who helped Noah bandage his wound, Julie, Orange Bar, Enya. In the end, why did Teacher Tsukini attack us students? Ya asked worriedly. She said it was work or something. What does that mean? Teacher Tsukini seems to have said that she wanted to get rid of some promising students, Orange Bar analyzed seriously. Could it be the actions of some criminal organization that has something against the Dawn organization? This wasn't impossible. The Dawn organization was a research organization on the surface, but the content of their research was the Dawn star pattern, which could turn humans into surpassers with extraordinary power. Of course, it was impossible for the country not to covet surpassers with extraordinary power. Therefore, the Dawn organization was also secretly involved in the security work of the country. The surpassers who graduated from Haolang Academy would be invited to join the Dawn organization and become a member of the security force of the Dawn organization. They would work for the country in the Dawn organization. It was also because of this that the project of the Dawn organization that Noah saw when he hacked into the country's database was classified. It was because the Dawn organization was a secret force hidden by the country and had a close relationship with the country. Naturally, a lot of criminal gangs couldn't stand the existence of the Dawn organization's security force. It was an object that could pose a serious threat to them. In this way, it was reasonable for a criminal gang to deliberately arrange for people to infiltrate the academy and get rid of promising students who might become the core members of the security force in the future. Ivanli, Julie, and Enya seemed to agree with Orange Bar's words and nodded one after another. Only Noah had a mocking smile on his face. Work? In the director's office of the academy, a man in a suit closed a document with a blank expression and ended his report. The above is the report of this time's new blade battle. Sitting at a luxurious desk in front of the man in the suit was a girl in a dark gothic lowly costume. She was the director of the academy. 99 lunar nights closed her eyes slightly as if she was digesting the information reported by the man in the suit. Sangua, how is Glass Rabbit? The injury is very serious. The man in the suit named Sangua said calmly. Even with the recovery ability of a rank V, if you want to recover, it will take a long time, right? Is that so? 99 lunar nights murmured. It's really surprising. Are you talking about the exception? Sangua's expressionless face also showed a look of surprise. It's really surprising. Not only did he defeat Daisuke with the strength of an ordinary person, but he also defeated Daisuke when he was at rank I. That's an opponent who even released Blaze. The gap between each rank was very large. Just a small difference of one rank, but the difference in ability was several times more than what it was before. A difference of one rank was already like this. If there was a difference of 2 ranks, then the difference couldn't be said to be hopeless, but it was clearly palpitating. In this way, in a situation where there was a difference of 4 ranks, he still defeated a high-ranked opponent. Moreover, it was an opponent who released the true strength of Blaze. Anyone would be surprised. Almost every year, we will arrange for a rank 3 to snipe the more outstanding students in a new blade battle of the freshmen. Using a more violent method to test and promote the growth of these students. Sangua pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose. Logically speaking, it is impossible for a newly born rank I to defeat a rank 3. In the past, the only one who was able to defeat a rank 3 was the special. However, even the special was only able to defeat a rank 3 when he was at a rank I by relying on his special Blaze. The special, on the other hand, was able to defeat a rank 3 with the strength of a normal person. In order to give him a bigger test, I specially allowed Glass Rabbit to not suppress her strength to rank 3. She could use a little bit of her true ability. 99 Lunar Knight's eyes flashed. In the end, the level V, who used all his strength, was defeated by a level 1. 99 Lunar Knights obviously knew that if he didn't have the Annihilation Strike, and that a great leap that he comprehended on the spot, then with Noah's rank I strength, there was absolutely no way he could defeat a rank V who released the true strength of Blaze. However, in the end, relying on the strength of the Annihilation Strike and a great leap, Noah still defeated rank V. This was an indisputable fact. Speaking of that special, there is news from England. Sangua suddenly opened his mouth and said. It is said that the young miss has already left her sister's school in England and boarded a helicopter to head over here. 99 Lunar Knight's hand movements slightly paused, and he somewhat helplessly smiled. It must be because she knew that there were 2 of her kind here, so she impatiently rushed over. After all, that young miss is quite willful. Sangua slightly lowered his head. Moreover, perhaps that young lady is here because of that exception? That's true. 99 Lunar Knights let out a somewhat joyful laugh. The exception and the special, they are the real kind. Chapter 222. A cold breeze blew in from afar, hitting the balcony outside the dormitory lounge, causing the air to become slightly chilly, causing people to involuntarily shiver. At a certain moment, the door to the balcony was opened, and Noah walked out from the bustling lounge. He came to the balcony and looked into the distance. Although the academy was not brightly lit at night, there were still lights flashing everywhere. From afar, Noah could see that some people were working in some corners of the academy, restoring some potholes and damaged areas to their original state. The damaged areas were all caused by the first years in the academy during today's new blade battle. Some of the damaged areas were relatively small, and would probably be restored by tomorrow. Some of the damaged areas were relatively large, and even if Noah and the others went to school, they might not be able to be restored. Looking at the people who were working in various corners, Noah raised his right hand that was wrapped in bandages and shifted his gaze to it. In the battle with the Moonlight Glass Rabbit, Noah only received a superficial wound on his hand, but the harvest was huge. Leap forward. This skill was comprehended by using the principle of Annihilation Strike, which allowed Noah's speed to soar who knows how many times. This harvest was indeed huge. After all, whether it was Annihilation Strike or Leap Forward, they all relied on the principle of the shockwave to be used. And the power of the shockwave was completely dependent on how much power the user could mobilize. That is to say, Annihilation Strike and Leap Forward, even if Noah released all the power in his body, they would still be very useful. If Noah used Annihilation Strike and Leap Forward with his real physical strength, the effect should be extremely terrifying, right? Annihilation Strike could give Noah extreme strength. Leap Forward could give Noah extreme speed. These two abilities could greatly increase Noah's strength. Being able to secretly learn and improve Annihilation Strike from 9-layer penetrations was already a good harvest. In addition to the Leap Forward that he learned, was it not worth it to pay a small price for it? And this experience also allowed Noah to see another benefit of Limit. As long as he could use the ability Limit flexibly, the chances of learning a new ability or new skill at a critical moment like today would greatly increase. Although it was very likely that there would be dangers in the future after deliberately limit the power, but the amount of effort, the amount of reward. This could be considered a rather risky benefit. In order to use limit flexibly, I must hone this ability. After coming to such a conclusion, Noah clenched his fist, because he felt that he was indeed growing, and revealed a happy smile. At this moment, a soft voice sounded from behind Noah. "It's a bit cold, what are you doing in this place?" Saying such a sentence, the owner of the voice came to Noah's side, and together with Noah, they looked into the distance. The brown ponytail behind him swayed in the breeze, and Ivanley's gem-like eyes seemed to be blooming in the dark night, making Noah could not help but look. With this glance, Noah also saw Ivanley's somewhat complicated expression. "What's wrong?" Without thinking, Noah asked. "Is there something on your mind?" "Something on your mind?" Ivanley showed a wry smile. "But you, after experiencing today's events, you actually did not have any reaction, isn't that strange?" Hearing this, Noah was silent. Obviously, Ivanley was concerned about today's events. Although he did not know what the so-called work that Eugenly Rabbit mentioned was, but it was a fact that the students in the school were being targeted. Even if not all of the students were good, being targeted by people who could take your life at any time, that feeling was not something that ordinary people could understand. Before Ivanley was implanted with the Dawn Star rune, and became a surpasser, before entering this school, she was just an ordinary girl studying in an ordinary middle school. Now, knowing that her life was being targeted by some people in this school, ordinary people would definitely choose to drop out of school. Ivanley did not make this choice in the first place. But that did not mean that Ivanley was not afraid. But even so, Ivanley still did not choose to leave the school immediately, and now, because of this matter, she was still worried. Noah could only think of one possibility. "Is there a reason?" Noah looked into the distance without looking back and said softly. "Is there a reason that you must stay here?" This time, it was Ivanley's turn to be silent. After a long while, Ivanley's voice sounded again, pretending to be spirited. "Although I don't really want people to know, especially Noah, but as expected, if I don't pour my heart out a little, I might not be able to sleep tonight." After saying that, Ivan's next sentence made everyone doubt their ears. "I want to make money. Make a lot of money." The extremely unscrupulous answer made Noah stunned, and his face also showed a surprised expression. Of course, being surprised was just being surprised, but Noah still chose not to interrupt. Although he only knew Ivanley for about 2 weeks, Noah believed that he knew Ivanley quite well. Therefore, Ivanley should have her reasons for saying such words. "My family actually has a small factory, and the operating situation is not so optimistic, but rather, it is very difficult." Ivanley seemed to be aware of Noah's thoughts. She smiled very gently and said in a very distant tone. "The people around us have been advising us to close the factory as soon as possible. If we continue to operate it without experience, it will only bring an unimaginable burden to the family. However, my father is unwilling to give up this factory that my late grandfather built with his life. He has been working hard until now. I love my grandfather very much." Ivanley's voice seemed to be very far away, but when she said this sentence, she was unusually determined. "So, I also support my father's idea of keeping the factory, and I really want to help, even a little." Hearing this, Noah remembered. On the first day of school, when the news that every student would receive 100,000 yen a month for living expenses came out, Ivanley immediately asked if she could send the living expenses back home. Was it because of this reason? Not only that, this should be the reason why I've only stayed in this school. Only 1 out of 1,000 people will have the ability to adapt to the daybreak star pattern and become a surpasser. The number of surpassers who can study in the academy for 3 years and graduate after 3 years of training are even fewer, Noah said with relief. But the Dawn Organization's security force can only be joined by those who graduated from the school, which makes people very precious. In order to keep as many surpassers as possible, the Dawn Organization's security force members' salary is surprisingly high. That's why I came. Ivanli smiled with relief. As long as I join the Dawn Organization after graduation and become a member of the security force, I will be able to earn enough income to rebuild the factory. And now, the school also accepted my request and remitted more than half of the monthly living expenses to my family account. It can be said that only by staying here, I can achieve my goal and revitalize my family's factory. Coming here, I don't regret at all. Ivanli's eyes slightly dimmed. But I'm afraid that I won't be able to survive in this environment. Ivanli was afraid that he would be killed like today. But what Ivanli was really afraid of was not death, but if he died, he would not be able to achieve his goal of revitalizing his family business. It was because of this that Ivan was so worried. Noah, who understood everything, suddenly smiled. Ivanli will be fine. Ivanli was stunned. Don't be afraid. Noah showed a gentle tone. I will protect Ivanli. Ivanli looked at Noah in a daze. After a while, he finally smiled. Then, Ivanli slightly moved closer to Noah and leaned his head on Noah's shoulder. Thank you. Noah shook his head and continued to look into the distance. The night was still going on. Chapter 223. The school's cafeteria felt more like a restaurant than a cafeteria. It wasn't that the school's cafeteria was high-end. It was just that the students in the school would choose to have a drink or even black tea after eating here. They would sit together before class and chat about everything, giving people the atmosphere of a cafeteria. Studying in this school was free of tuition, food, and accommodation expenses. Therefore, no one would worry about whether to drink a cup of tea or order a dessert in order to save money. Naturally, the students were also happy to gather here to enjoy the leisure after a meal. Some people had already started their daily dessert time, while others were still eating breakfast. At a certain moment, most of the eyes in the cafeteria were focused on the entrance of the cafeteria. He's here, he's here. He's the exception, right? The famous one among the freshmen? He's a bit handsome. Amidst the rustling of conversation, Noah, who was in uniform, walked in from the outside. Under the gazes of almost everyone present at the same time, he walked in calmly while sighing in his heart. Noah had long been used to being the center of attention. After all, in the world of the Dark Bullet, because of his identity as the Cursed Child's Shelter, Noah's existence was widely known in every sense of the word. No matter where he went, as long as someone recognized him, he would be the center of attention. However, in that world where there were people who rejected the cursed child, most of the time, Noah received the kind of attention that was full of malice. Compared to those full of malice, the students in the school mostly looked at Noah with curiosity, and there were very few with malice. For Noah, who was used to the malice of others, the attention of the students in the school was more comfortable. However, if possible, Noah really didn't want to be watched while eating. He believed that even if it was another person, the other person would definitely have the same idea. Although he said so, even if he cared, he couldn't do anything. Therefore, as long as there was no problem, they could just walk over in a dignified manner. With this thought in mind, Noah walked to the dining area as if nothing had happened. The school cafeteria basically provided 3 types of meals. First was set A, which consisted of white rice and meat. The second was set B, which consisted of white rice and fish. Finally, there was a buffet where they could choose their favorite side dishes from a total of 50 types of food, including Japanese, Western, and Chinese. Although Set A and Set B were carefully designed by the staff in charge of nutrition management in the cafeteria, the free choice of the buffet was undoubtedly more popular. Nearly half of the students only put the dishes they liked on their plates, without considering whether the nutrition was balanced or not. Noah wasn't particularly picky about food, but it was also a kind of happiness to be able to choose the dishes he liked. In this regard, Noah would not treat himself unfairly. At that moment, Noah took one of the Japanese, Western, and Chinese dishes that he liked. Then, he added a bowl of white rice and a bowl of miso soup. With this meal that was neither Chinese nor Western, he found a seat and sat down. Found it. At this time, a slightly cheerful voice sounded behind Noah. He saw, led by Ivanli, Julie, Orange, Ya, and other girls who had a good relationship with each other, holding plates in their hands. Under Ivanli's command, they walked towards Noah together. Whether it was Ivanli, Julie, Orange, or Ya, they were all very good-looking girls. These 4 girls gathered together. Suddenly, the same treatment as Noah just now was taken care of on this group of girls, attracting the attention of almost everyone in the cafeteria. Unfortunately, unlike the curiosity that occupied most of the eyes when looking at Noah just now, this time, there was no curiosity in the eyes of the girls, only amazement. Then, when the group of girls all sat down around Noah, their gazes changed from amazement to envy. Of course, this envy was directed at Noah. Without asking if Noah agreed or not, Ivanli and Julie sat on Noah's left and right respectively. Orange and Ya hesitated for a moment, then sat down opposite Noah and Ivanli. Ivanli just sat down, glancing at the dishes on Noah's plate, and made such a sound. As expected of a guy, he really eats a lot. Noah took a bowl of white rice, 3 dishes, and a bowl of miso soup. Among them, the 3 dishes almost filled up a small plate. Ivanli, Julie, Orange, and Ya all only took 2 dishes that could fill up a small plate. Apart from Orange, who added an extra bowl of white rice, Ivanli added soup, Julie added bread, and Ya added rice balls. Compared to Noah, who had filled 3 small plates, the girls, who had only filled 1 small plate, ate very little. Especially Julie, who overwhelmingly ate a lot less than the others. The small plate was basically filled with vegetables. So, Julie looked at her plate and then at Noah's plate. After a while, she said dejectedly, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Should I eat more?" "Don't ask yourself to eat more." Noah reached out and habitually patted Julie's head. "As long as you can eat." Julie nodded her head lightly. Pfft, on the side, Ivanli, who was watching Noah and Julie's interaction, let out a light snort. "Noah, you're so good to Julie. If you look at it this way, you're just like Julie's brother." Orange had a knowing smile on his face. "Aren't you afraid of spoiling Julie?" "Why would I?" Noah replied unhappily. "You all know how strong Julie is, right? But, it feels good to have someone dote on you." Ya couldn't help but blurt out as she watched Noah stroke Julie's head. Julie's face was expressionless, but the ahog on her head was swaying. She seemed to be very happy, and she couldn't help but blurt out. "Really, I'm so envious." "Envious?" Ivanli, Julie, and Orange looked at Ya strangely, which made Ya realize what she said. She blushed and lowered her head, almost burying it into the pair of huge softness in front of her chest. Seeing this, Noah smiled bitterly, but suddenly felt a pain in his ribs. Someone pinched him. "Humph!" Ivanli nonchalantly picked up the soup and drank it mouthful by mouthful. Noah touched his ribs where he was pinched and could only roll his eyes at Ivanli. Ever since that night, Ivanli poured out his heart's desire to Noah. Ivanli often did things similar to today. Sometimes, he would vent his anger on Noah over some small matter, and sometimes he would be abnormally happy because of Noah's careless and considerate actions. His mood was constantly changing. This naturally made the distance between Noah and Ivanli much closer, but it also made Noah suffer from some unknown pain from time to time. Thinking of Ivanli's confession that night, Noah couldn't help but look at Julie. After that day's experience of being attacked, Noah's group didn't choose to drop out of school because their lives were in danger. Ivanli insisted on staying because he needed to revitalize his family business. Orange Bar was the descendant of a martial arts family. Just being targeted was not enough to make the successor of the Orange 18 Arts Retreat. Although Ya's personality was a bit timid, she also wanted to prove herself to convince her to stay. But, what about Julie? This child who seemed to need the most care, for what reason did she want to stay even if her life was in danger? Perhaps feeling Noah's gaze, Julie turned her head, and her deep red eyes met Noah's eyes. Noah? It's nothing. Noah suppressed the doubts in his heart, patted Julie's head, and said to the group of girls. Okay, let's hurry up and finish breakfast. Saying this, Noah's eyes burst out with a bright light. Don't forget, we're going to upgrade the sublimation instrument today. Ivanly, Julie, Orange Bar, and Ya's eyes lit up. They nodded and began to eat seriously. Chapter 224. Almost a week had passed since the end of the new blade battle. During this week, the teacher in charge of the first years, Sakujiri Bunny, had taken a leave of absence due to some matters. Temporarily, a teacher named Three Kingdoms was teaching the first years. And this so-called leave of absence due to some matters was also what Three Kingdoms said when he came to substitute for the first years. Regarding this statement, Ivanly, Julie, Tachaba, Ya, and Kyujituryu, who had witnessed the fierce battle between Noah and Sakujiri Bunny on the day of the new blade battle, were full of doubts. Logically speaking, this kind of dangerous person who deliberately attacked and harmed the students of the school should be directly expelled by the school, or even locked up as a criminal. Now, what was this leave of absence due to some matters all about? This question troubled the group for an entire week. However, this did not include Noah. Noah maintained an indifferent attitude towards the Three Kingdoms statement from the beginning to the end. Even when the group of girls discussed this matter in private, Noah had always maintained an indifferent attitude, which made the group of girls puzzled. In a situation where they could not figure it out, the group of girls simply stopped thinking about this question and focused their attention on the other news brought by Three Kingdoms. According to what Sakujiri Bunny said before, the tripping double blades, who achieved excellent results in the new blade battle, would have an additional chance to obtain the ascension ritual. On the first day of the first year's substitute class, in addition to bringing the news that Sakujiri Bunny had taken a leave of absence due to some matters, the list of students who achieved excellent results in the new blade battle was also announced. Those who could obtain an additional chance to obtain the ascension ritual were only those who defeated 3 groups of tripping double blades in the new blade battle and obtained 3 or more victories. And those who obtained 3 victories in the new blade battle, Ivanly and Julie, Tachaba and Ya, Kyujituryu and Kyujituryu, these 3 pairs of tripping double blades were all on the list. As for Noah, it was even more unavoidable. Among the results announced by the Three Kingdoms, Noah had obtained 7 victories that made the hearts of those who heard it tighten. That was to say, he had defeated 7 sets of tripping double blades. If it wasn't for the appearance of Tsukujijiri here midway, Ivan, Julie, Tachaba, and Ya, who challenged Noah, would definitely have been defeated. Furthermore, on that day, Kyuchi Tsukujijiri and Tsukujijiri Tokasaki would definitely have come looking for Noah. Then, the result would very likely be 10 wins. Today was the day the Three Kingdoms announced for everyone to undergo the ascension ritual. Therefore, under the envious gazes of his classmates, Noah and his group went to the place where the sublimation ritual had already been prepared. As soon as they arrived at the scene, Noah and the others saw 2 other acquaintances who had arrived earlier. They were none other than Kujuryu Turyu and Uemi Tokasaki. Huchi! Juba exclaimed in surprise. Have you been discharged? Because of Noah's intervention, only Kue Tokasaki was injured by Suki Tori during the Battle of the New Blades. She was seriously injured and was sent to the hospital. With Kue Tokasaki's injuries, even if he was a rank I surpasser and had his recovery enhanced, it shouldn't be enough for him to fully recover from his injuries in just a week. Humph! Kue Tokasaki crossed her arms and snorted softly before turning her head away. I'm not weak enough to be bedridden because of an injury of that level. Let me translate for you. 9 layers Flo scratched his cheek and said mischievously. According to the translation, because it was embarrassing to lie in bed all the time, he ignored other people's advice and forced himself to leave the hospital. Tisk, Kukui Tokusaki seemed to be extremely unhappy with the 9 Heavens Tokugawa, but he did not refute it. It was obvious that the 9 Heavens Tokugawa was right. Well. Ivanli put his hands behind his back and bent down slightly with a smile. Actually, it's not a bad choice to leave the hospital. If he can successfully pass today's sublimation ritual and ascend to level 2, Thursday Chi classmates' recovery ability will be further strengthened. This way, his injuries will heal faster, right? That's true. Juba nodded. Let's hope you can pass today's sublimation ritual. If your body and spirit don't reach the standard of sublimation, you will fail to sublimate even if you have the chance to go through the sublimation ritual. That was probably what Juba was trying to say. Yeah, the most timid and unconfident person was so nervous that she started sweating. No problem. On the other hand, Julie was the calmest person present. Everyone will definitely be able to successfully ascend. Everyone present nodded their heads and chose to believe in their own abilities. Noah quietly looked at Ninefold Totoro and couldn't help but recall the scene when Ninefold Totoro blocked the attack of Tsukuda Hair in order to protect Kunieshi Hokusaki. To be more precise, it should be said that he recalled Ninefold Totoro's blaze, shield. The type of blaze differed from person to person. Some people were swords. Some people were knives. Some people were bows. Some people were guns. They were all weapons with very simple structures. Without exception, the blaze that had appeared up until now all had 2 rules. First, the blaze was only a weapon. Second, the structure of the blaze was definitely not too complicated. Because the human soul itself was a very simple existence, it didn't have a complicated shape, nor did it have a complicated structure. Although the form of the shield wasn't complicated, it was still an existence that was beyond the scope of a weapon. For a soul that could only materialize into a weapon, it was already considered a very complicated form. Needless to say, a firearm like the pistol, even if it didn't break away from the scope of a weapon, its structure was so complicated that a simple soul couldn't materialize it. However, there were always exceptions to everything. The Daybreak Star tattoo that was implanted into the Surpasser's body contained the data of almost all weapons since ancient times. And a person's soul would also manifest different forms based on their own experiences, wishes, and other factors. Therefore, the Surpasser's soul would, under the influence of the Daybreak Star tattoo, choose the form most suitable for their existence from the Daybreak Star tattoo and materialize it. As a result, all kinds of different weapons were born. Noah's revolver was, for various reasons, Noah's weapon became the blaze. Even if this kind of example was even rarer than blaze being a pistol or a shield, to the point that it was impossible for anyone to reappear in the past or the future, it still couldn't be treated as an example of blaze having an abnormal form. But the Ninefold Totoro's shield was an exception to the blaze. Noah was a little curious. This guy who was called a special ability, why would the blaze be in the form of a shield? Perhaps this curiosity was because of the so-called same kind that Tsukujiri Bunny spoke of? But Noah's intuition told him. With the Annihilation Strike, S predecessor and the blaze, S, shield, the future of the 9-layer penetrations, would definitely not be simple. After Naz and Rentaro, the Ninefold Totoro was the third person to give Noah a feeling of unlimited possibilities in the future. Just as Noah was thinking about this, a staff member wearing a white coat appeared. Everyone, please follow me. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other and then lined up together. Under the guidance of the staff member wearing the white coat, they walked towards the site of the sublimation ceremony. Wang. When the new Daybreak Star tattoo was injected into Noah's body through a special needleless injection method, Noah only felt his body slightly warm up. Immediately, the pure white star tattoo appeared on his chest and bloomed with a warm flame. Compared to the first time the Daybreak Star tattoo was implanted, it made people feel as if their whole body was burning, but the sublimation ceremony only made people feel this much pain and then nothing else. However, with his unique sensing ability, Noah, who knew his body like the back of his hand, could clearly feel it. His body had undergone a transformation that couldn't be seen from the outside. Chapter 225. Phew. In the corridor, Ye was pressing his chest and letting out a heavy sigh of relief, as if he had just completed a life-threatening operation. It could be seen that a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. It's great to be able to successfully ascend. That's right. Orange Bar also patted his chest. Our daily efforts didn't go to waste. That's great, yeah. Yes. Ye revealed a happy smile, clearly in a very good mood. If one's body and mind did not reach the standard of ascension, even if they went through the instrument of ascension, they would not be able to successfully ascend. It was precisely because he knew this that Ye was especially happy. Because, among the people who received the additional opportunity of the instrument of ascension, this time, whether it was physical, mental, or strength, Ye was the weakest. But even so, Ye had successfully ascended and became a level 2 surpasser. How could Ye not be happy? And even Ye had successfully ascended to level 2, not to mention the others. None of them had a chance of failing. This way, everyone has reached the standard of being promoted to the second grade. Julie tilted her little head, making a jingling sound. It's great that no one has to be expelled. In Haolang Academy, there were conditions for being promoted to the next grade. Within a year, when they had to be promoted to the next grade, the students had to successfully ascend, or they would be expelled. In other words, if a first-grade student wanted to be promoted to the second grade, they had to ascend to level 2, and if a second-grade student wanted to be promoted to the third grade, they had to ascend to level 3. At the end of the third grade, they could announce their graduation from Haolang Academy and enter the Dawn organization to work. And those present who had successfully ascended to level 2 were equivalent to obtaining a pass to the second grade. In the following year, they would be able to continue studying without any academic burden. But, did we really ascend to level 2? I vainly touched his chest with some uncertainty. It doesn't feel real. Compared to the first time the Daybreak Star rune was implanted, the instrument of ascension was terrifyingly dull. Everyone also felt their bodies heat up after being injected with the new Daybreak Star pattern. Then, they were congratulated by the staff and announced that the upgrade was a success. If that was the case, who would be able to feel anything? Only the silent Noah, who was walking at the back of the group of girls, knew what kind of changes his body had undergone. Due to Noah using his limit ability to suppress all aspects of his strength to the level of grade I, this time, Noah could clearly feel the degree of enhancement his body had obtained. That was when he was at rank I. It was a completely different level of enhancement. Using a sentence to describe it, if the level I enhancement is 10, then the level 2 enhancement is definitely not 20, at the very least it should be 30. In other words, just by raising one level, Noah and the others had obtained several times the enhancement of their level 1. After fully understanding the difference between level 1 and level 2, Noah finally understood what kind of miracle it was for him to be able to defeat the level V Moonlight Glass Rabbit. The higher the level, the greater the gap. That is to say, according to the current enhancement, the level V enhancement was definitely not just 50, it was at least 100. With such a terrifying degree of enhancement, coupled with the Moonlight Glass Rabbit's outstanding physical strength, battle experience, and battle skills, as well as the release of the true strength of the Blaze, the Moonlight Glass Rabbit would be in an invincible position even if it faced 30 level 3. To be able to defeat such an opponent, without the exterminating strike and leap, Noah would definitely not be able to accomplish such a feat when he was still at level 1, since the physical aspect had obtained such a degree of enhancement, then the mental aspect would naturally not be left behind. Just like the physical aspect, the mental aspect had obtained several times the enhancement of level 1. Even Noah's limit, which had entered into a state of self-growth, had also obtained a huge leap in his magical power. Apart from that, even the blaze, had undergone a transformation. For Noah, he could feel that the knight's sword and revolver, in the depths of his soul, had become even more solid. The sharpness of the knight's sword and the might of the revolver had also been enhanced. Whether it was the physical aspect, the mental aspect, the magical power, or the soul, all the enhancements obtained from the upgraded daybreak star pattern were once again stripped away by Noah's special physique, becoming the true strength of Noah. It was impossible for them to disappear when the daybreak star pattern left his body. Overall, apart from not obtaining the blaze, and the limit ability, the instrument of sublimation this time had brought Noah far more benefits than the previous time. If this continued, the benefits that the daybreak star pattern would bring to Noah would absolutely reach an unimaginable level. As long as the strength of Noah's various abilities did not reach the limits of the daybreak star pattern. Suddenly, Noah felt a gaze penetrating through, directly landing on his body. It stared at him without letting go. Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the gaze. It was from the outside of the building, through the window, and onto Noah's body. Following his perception ability, Noah followed the gaze and looked out the window, looking at the opposite side. Then, Noah saw it. On the top of the opposite building, a young girl stood outside the guardrail. She was not afraid of losing her footing and falling. She stood facing the wind. Her bright blonde hair swayed back and forth in the wind. It was exceptionally eye-catching. The young girl stood there, looking at Noah, as if she had also noticed that Noah had noticed her. For a moment, she seemed to be surprised, but quickly changed her attitude. Undoubtedly, the distance between the building and the opposite building was at least 100 meters, Noah inexplicably understood. At this time, the corner of the young girl's mouth must have curved into a beautiful arc. However, no matter how beautiful that arc was, it could not change the meaning of the other party's mouth curved into an arc. It was as if she had found her prey, and would not let it escape. Immediately, the young girl's mouth seemed to slightly wriggle. With such a distance, even if Noah had now reached level 2, and his vision had been strengthened, there was still no way for him to clearly see the shape of the other party's mouth. However, Noah still understood what the other party's wriggling mouth was saying. "Found you." So simple. In the next moment, the blonde girl turned around, leaving behind a beautiful back view, and disappeared from Noah's sight. Noah looked at the top of the building that was already empty. His eyes slowly narrowed. Noah? Julie, who was walking in front, found that Noah not only did not follow, but also stood behind, looking out the window. She suddenly felt quite puzzled. "What's wrong with you?" Noah finally reacted. He retracted his gaze and looked at Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, and Nya, who had stopped in their tracks and were looking at him with puzzled gazes. He shook his head gently. "No, it's nothing." After saying that, Noah strode forward, caught up with the group of young girls, and left the scene together with the group of young girls. Noah did not notice. At the same time he left, at the entrance of the opposite building, a young girl with long blonde hair swaying in the wind walked out in an unforgettable and confident manner. She raised her head and looked in the direction of where Noah had just been. "Noah Dole. Is it?" As if she was reminiscing about the fate of meeting with him, the girl closed her eyes and said these words as if she was intoxicated. "It's slightly different from what I imagined, but it's also more interesting than expected." With that said, the young girl raised her hand and made an aiming gesture. She aimed at the position where Noah had just been, closed one eye, and raised her hand like a gun. "The meeting of the exception and the special, I'm really looking forward to it." Chapter 226. Hugh. On the road at night, Julie's eyes were closed as she lay on Noah's back. Her cute face was slightly flushed as she fell into a deep sleep. Yeah. Ivanli, who was walking next to Noah, shook his head with an unconcealable smile on his face. She actually fell asleep in the middle of the celebration. Should I say that this is really Julie's style? Or should I say that this child really is like a child who never grows up? This can't be helped. Orange Bar, who was walking on the other side of Noah, smiled understandingly. The weather here is too stuffy for Julie, who has always lived in a country with lower temperatures. Now that it's almost time to turn off the lights, it's not strange that she's so tired. Isn't it better to hold the celebration during the holidays? Yes said uneasily. If Julie knew that we were celebrating while she was asleep, would she be unhappy? Julie isn't such a petty person. Noah, who was carrying Julie and walking between Ivan and Orange Bar, smiled. Besides, since we're celebrating our promotion to level 2, it should be done on the day of the successful promotion. Otherwise, it won't be fun if we wait until the holidays. Noah is right. Ivan poked his head out from beside Noah and winked at Ya. Besides, Julie should feel regretful instead of angry that she fell asleep in the middle of the celebration. I was planning to scold her when she wakes up. Don't. Ya shook her head nervously. In that case, Jolie-chan will be too pitiful. Julie, who was lying on Noah's back, wrinkled her nose slightly as she heard the conversation between Ivan and Ya. Her arms around Noah's neck tightened as she murmured in her sleep. Daddy. Everyone was stunned when they heard Julie's murmur. Then, they chuckled tacitly. Julie called you Daddy. Ivan nudged Noah with his elbow and teased him. Noah, how do you feel about having such a lovely daughter like Julie? Noah glanced at Ivan and sighed. It's okay. I'm already used to taking care of children. Upon hearing this, Ivanli, Tachibana, and Ya burst into laughter again. Their bell-like laughter echoed in the night sky, making the atmosphere exceptionally relaxed. Unfortunately, the group of people who were laughing and chatting with each other did not notice. Presently a look of serenity came over Julie's face, and another murmur. Noah. After a while, the group arrived at the entrance of the dormitory. Okay, Noah. Ivan turned around and put his hand on Julie's shoulder. Give me Julie. Can you do it? Noah asked hesitantly. How about I send Julie directly back to your room? Are you an idiot? Ivan rolled his eyes at Noah. I'm rank 2 now. How can I not even carry such a light Julie? That's true. Noah shrugged. Don't worry. Tachibana and Ya also came over. We'll help. Noah nodded. Then I'll leave it to you. With that said, Ivan, Tachibana, and Ya work together. Julie's hand, which was tightly wrapped around Noah's neck, was finally released and moved to Tachibana's back. Then we'll go up first. You should go back to your room as well. Good night, Noah. After leaving these words, Ivan, Tachibana, and Ya walked into the dormitory under Noah's gaze and moved toward Ivan and Julie's room. However, even after the group of girls disappeared from his sight, Noah still stood in the same spot and did not leave. Whoosh! In the dead of night, a cold wind blew from the sky and swept past Noah, who was standing in front of the dormitory door. Whoosh! At this moment, a black shadow suddenly rushed into the sky from the side of the forest. The tip of its foot lightly tapped on a tree branch and gracefully swept into the dark and windy night sky, leaping into the distance. Regarding this, Noah's face did not show the slightest bit of surprise. Obviously, he already knew that the other party was lying in ambush nearby. His eyes became fierce, and with a twist of his foot, his body shot out like lightning and swept onto the top of a tree. Stepping on the canopy that looked like it could fall at any time, Noah's gaze swept across the night sky and finally landed on the top of a building. There, a figure clearly reflected in Noah's dark and deep eyes. At this moment, Noah narrowed his eyes and tapped on the canopy. His body turned into a shadow and flew out. After a short moment, he steadily landed on the top of the building where the black shadow was. He slowly raised his head and looked in front. In the next moment, the bright golden hair swaying under the gentle moonlight was imprinted in Noah's eyes. The one in the day was also you, right? Noah suddenly opened his mouth. Purposely luring me out, it's time to tell me your motive, right? It was not known if the other party listened to Noah's words, but after a while, the other party turned around. The golden hair behind her back swayed in a beautiful arc in the air as she faced Noah. At this moment, behind the other party, a full moon turned into the background, releasing gentle moonlight and enveloping the other party's body. Under the moonlight, Noah's vision was also somewhat affected, and there was no way for him to see the other party's full appearance. But in the next moment, the other party's red lips opened slightly, and with a clear voice, she spat out a word, which Noah heard clearly. Blazing Fong. As soon as he finished speaking, a beautiful star pattern spun and spread out from the opponent's chest. It exploded into a blazing flame and turned into a weapon, falling into the opponent's hand. Looking at the weapon in his opponent's hand, Noah's pupils couldn't help but shrink. It was a long and slender spear with rippling blue patterns on the body of the spear. However, it was definitely not a cold weapon, but a real hot weapon, a rifle. His opponent actually possessed a surpasser like Noah's blaze, a surpasser with a complex structure that shouldn't have appeared. Hee hee. The girl with the rifle let out a joyful laugh. She raised the rifle in her hand and aimed it at Noah. Bang! In the midst of the muffled gunshot sound, the girl didn't hesitate to pull the trigger of the rifle in her hand. The bullet immediately turned into a streak of black lightning, piercing through the darkness and exploding out. However, almost at the same time, a blazing flame burst out from Noah's body and turned into a revolver. Bang! Compared to the rifle, a much louder gunshot sound reverberated. Another streak of black lightning also burst out, sweeping forward and colliding head-on with the incoming bullet of the rifle. Clang! In the midst of the collision, the bullet of the rifle was directly knocked away by the bullet of the revolver. Immediately, the remaining bullet of the revolver flew in the direction of the girl without slowing down. Shio! The pitch-black bullet streaked across the girl's cheek and disappeared into the darkness. Whether it was Noah or the girl, they didn't care where the bullet from their blaze went or whether it hit the other party. They only stared at each other with a different expression in their eyes. Noah's eyes were filled with surprise and surprise. The girl's eyes were filled with a bright and excited light. He saw that the girl was staring at the revolver in Noah's hand and chuckled as if she was intoxicated. Sure enough, we are the same kind. Noah pondered for a moment and coldly said. Who are you? You will know soon. The girl smiled cheerfully, turned around, and had her back facing Noah. I look forward to our meeting again, the same kind, in my destiny. Leaving these words, the girl jumped, as if she wanted to fly towards the round moon. With a perfect parabola, she cut through the night sky and finally disappeared into the endless darkness below. Noah didn't have any thoughts of chasing after her and silently watched her leave. He raised the revolver in his hand, moved his gaze, and looked up. In the dark night, the pure white lines on the body of the gun rippled like water waves. Noah cancelled the materialization of the blaze and murmured. Same kind. Chapter 227. The next day, in the first grade classroom, Julie sat in her seat, motionlessly looking in front of her. Her face was as emotionless as usual, but there was a gloomy atmosphere surrounding her, making it very clear that she was not in a good mood. Are you still upset about last night's celebration? Ivan, who was sitting next to Julie, sighed. Didn't I tell you, it wasn't your fault that you fell asleep halfway? Yeah, Julie's tone was still a bit gloomy. But, it's rare to celebrate with everyone. What do you think we are celebrating for? Ivan pointed at Julie's head with his finger and said reproachfully. Since we were able to celebrate this time for reaching level 2, then next time we can celebrate for reaching level 3. Celebrating is something that can be done at any time, so don't mind it anymore. Hearing this, the gloomy atmosphere surrounding Julie was slightly relieved, making Ivan show a helpless expression. She really is like a child. Because of a small matter, she was gloomy. Because of a few words of advice, her mood improved. In addition to her appearance and slightly natural personality, she kept saying, Daddy, Mommy, and so on. From this point of view, perhaps Julie was really no different from a child. Sitting behind Ivan and Julie, Noah quietly listened to the conversation between his two friends, but his mind had already drifted away. Under the moonlight, the girl pointed the rifle at him. Although he did not know the other's true identity, the rifle she used, no matter from its appearance or aura, was without a doubt the blaze. In fact, before the girl took out the rifle, she did shout the words, "Blaze." Therefore, the blaze that should not have appeared, but was the same type as Noah, was indeed materialized by a girl. Needless to say, to be able to use the blaze, the other must be a surpasser. Then, was the other party also a student of this school? But if that was the case, then it would be the same as Noah. A student who had such a special blaze would definitely receive the attention of all the teachers and students in the school. It was impossible that no one had heard of it before. In that case, the identity of the other party was a mystery. However, the other party seemed to be quite persistent about Noah. The reason should be the so-called kindred spirits, right? Who was the other party? With this question in mind, Noah fell into deep thought. At this moment, at the door of the classroom, the substitute teacher, Sangua, pushed open the door and walked in from outside to the podium. However, as soon as he appeared in the classroom, the three kingdoms made such an unexpected statement. Although this is something that rarely happens in our school, I still want to tell everyone that today, our class will welcome a transfer student. A transfer student? As expected, all the students in the class were stunned. A surpasser could only be found in 1,000 people, and it was someone who only had the adaptability of the daybreak star pattern and might not be able to successfully implant the daybreak star pattern. Therefore, it was just as the three kingdoms had said, a student who turned into a surpasser halfway through their journey was a very rare occurrence. However, the person who walked in from outside the classroom not only made the stunned students come back to their senses, but they also all sucked in a breath of air. No matter if it was a boy or a girl, their eyes were all filled with amazement. The person who entered the classroom was like Julie, a foreign beauty who was obviously not a local. However, unlike Julie, the other party's appearance could not be described as cute. This was because the girl not only had a breathtaking and seductive figure, but the aura around her was also not as quiet and beautiful as Julie's. Instead, it was as if the spotlight was purposely focused on her body. Every part of her body exuded a strong sense of existence like a star. Both were foreign beauties. If Julie was the moon floating in the night sky, releasing soft silver frost, then this girl was the sun blooming with scorching light in the sky. Julie would unconsciously attract the attention of the surrounding people. On the other hand, this girl seemed to be attacking at any time and any place. Every move she made was attracting the attention of the surrounding people. What was even more amazing was that she also had a pair of ocean-like jade eyes. Furthermore, she had extremely bright golden hair that reached her waist. Sitting in the last row, Noah slowly straightened his back and looked at the girl. His eyebrows gradually raised. Under everyone's gaze, the girl walked into the classroom and came to the podium. She shook her bright-colored hair and at the same time, cast her gaze on Noah who was sitting in the last row. Her face gradually revealed an extremely proud and confident smile. That smile was exactly the same as the one she left behind before disappearing in front of Noah last night. Yes. This so-called transfer student in front of him was the mysterious girl who had the blaze rifle. Lilith Bristow. After saying such a name, the girl named Lilith put one hand on her waist and smiled sweetly. I transferred from a sister school in the United Kingdom. Although it's a bit rushed, I'll specially allow you to directly call my name. Whether it was the content or the tone, Lilith's words were full of arrogance. However, this kind of arrogance strangely didn't arouse the disgust of many people. Instead, it made people feel that it was natural. Therefore, Ivan, who was sitting in front of Noah, couldn't help but speak. What an incredible person. Hee hee. Lilith closed her eyes and smiled nonchalantly. I'll take it as a compliment. Saying so, the corner of Lilith's mouth curled up. With leisurely steps, she walked down from the podium. From the beginning to the end, Lilith's eyes were fixed on Noah. Then, under the stunned expression of the surrounding people, Lilith directly passed through every empty seat in the classroom and sat down in the last row. Just next to Noah. Ivan, Julie, Tachaba, and other people who were familiar with Noah looked at each other. Even Noah frowned. Although he had long expected this girl named Lilith to come for him, Noah didn't expect that the other party didn't have the slightest intention of avoiding him and directly approached him. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was what Lilith said later. Teacher, 3 kingdoms. Lilith's voice echoed. Can we continue? If you don't have any questions. 3 kingdoms pushed his glasses and made such a statement. Noah, from today onwards, you and Lilith will form the tripping double blade, huh? The students were stunned at first, then they immediately exclaimed in surprise. Tripping. Tripping double blade? Ivan was a little overwhelmed. In other words, from today onwards, Noah will always live with Lilith? The ahog on Julie's head suddenly stood up, and even Tachaba and slightly opened their mouths. Teacher. Noah's frown became tighter and tighter. Isn't that a little inappropriate? Student Noah, it's because you don't have a partner who can form a tripping double blade that you've always been alone. However, the school's basic education policy is for 2 people to form a group. 3 kingdoms indifferently said. There was no way in the past, but now there is finally one more student in the class. The rules also say that the school will arrange for those who don't officially form the tripping double blade, in the end to form the tripping double blade. This is the rule, you didn't forget it, right? As he said this, 3 kingdoms looked at Lilith. Moreover, as a special student, Lilith also didn't object to this decision. Special? What is that? All the students were at a loss. Noah turned his gaze to Lilith, but found that she was also looking at him. This is fate. As if Lilith had caught her prey, her eyes bloomed with a strange look, and her smile was still confident. Let's get along well, as an exception and a special. Chapter 228. In the corridor of the dormitory, Noah, who was walking towards his own room, heaved a deep sigh under the piercing gaze of the people who had been staring at him from the stairs. Even if Noah didn't look back, he could guess that Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, Enya, who came back with him, didn't return to their rooms immediately. Instead, they stayed at the stairs. Most likely, they won't leave before he enters his room. The reason is very simple. It's just that these girls seem to care more about Lilith, who is about to move in with him, than Noah himself. However, what can Noah do? The rule of the academy was that the students had to form the official tripping twin blades. If they couldn't form the tripping twin blades in the end, the academy would arrange for the rest of the students to form the tripping twin blades. Among the freshmen, because Noah was the only one left, he couldn't find a partner to form a tripping double blade, so he had no choice but to delay. Now, as soon as Lilith moved into the class, Noah, who has been single, naturally has to be with Lilith, who also doesn't have a tripping double blade. As for the difference between men and women, if the academy can really consider this, Noah will be very happy. Unfortunately, it didn't. Having said that, since the establishment of the academy, there was no example of men and women forming a tripping double blade until Noah came to this academy. That is to say, from the beginning of temporarily forming a tripping double blade with Ivanli and Julie to now forming a formal tripping double blade with Lilith, as a person living with the opposite sex, Noah is the first person in the history of this academy to eat crabs. I don't know if it's lucky or unfortunate. Enduring the sharp gazes that continued to attack him from behind, Noah sighed once again. He walked to the door of his room and extended his hand to push open the door. Until then, the gaze from behind disappeared. Vaguely, the footsteps of Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, Enya also sounded, which made Noah finally relax his expression a little. However, this relaxation couldn't last long. In the next second, when Noah walked into his room and closed the door, the scene that appeared in front of him instantly made Noah speechless. "Oh. You're back." The one who said this sentence was the tripping double blade, who should move into this room today and live with Noah. At this time, the girl named Lilith was sitting at a pure white round table. There was a tea set on the table with tea and snacks. Lilith held the cup in her hand and leisurely sipped on it. If Noah remembered correctly, although there was a small round table in his room, it was not only a small wooden table, but it was also so short that one could only sit on the floor. It was not like the table in front of Lilith that was as tall as an ordinary table. It looked very high-end and had chairs beside it. If that was the only change, it would be fine. However, the room in front of Noah was completely different from the room he saw before he went out in the morning. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was changed beyond recognition. The layout was still the same. However, the curtains, wardrobes, TV, bookshelves, and so on were all replaced with high-end items that could only be found in a luxury suite. Even the standard bunk bed was replaced with a large double bed with a sofa next to it. Everywhere was filled with the noble taste of a lady's room. Such a room, I believe that anyone who saw it would think that it was a luxury suite in a hotel, not a room in a school dormitory. And naturally, Lilith, who was sitting at a small white table in the middle of such a room, was a real missy. After all, beside Lilith, there was a girl wearing a butler's tuxedo, waiting for orders behind. Is that the butler? But the butler should generally be a man, right? Is he here to serve Lilith? Then he should be wearing a maid's uniform, right? Also, what's with this feeling of breaking into a rich person's house? Everything had too many factors that needed to be complained about, so with so many factors combined together, Noah didn't know what to say for a while. What's wrong? On the contrary, Lilith was puzzled by Noah's behavior. She tilted her head and looked around. Sure enough, even if the room is changed, the taste is still too low. It has nothing to do with taste. Noah didn't hide his boredom. After all, we are here at school. If you want to enjoy it, you might as well go home and enjoy it. Listening to Noah's sarcastic words, the butler girl standing behind Lilith immediately tightened her face and took a step forward. But when she was about to say something, Lilith stopped her. Noah is my roommate. He has the right to comment on this room, Sarah. Lilith said such words, but she didn't have a humble attitude at all. She was still so confident. Although I say so, this is also my interest. As a roommate, you should accommodate me specially. Is it specially again? Noah closed his eyes slightly as if he had given up. He stopped talking and walked into the room. He took off his uniform jacket, opened the wardrobe that had been replaced, and hung his clothes in it. It was worth mentioning that although the wardrobe was replaced, all the clothes that Noah originally put in the wardrobe were still there, and they were now hanging in the same position as they were in the morning. Sarah. After Noah hung the clothes in the wardrobe, Lilith said to herself. Help my roommate make a cup of milk tea. Got it, Mississippi. The butler girl named Sarah bowed slightly, but at the moment when she bent down, she glared fiercely at Noah. Then, she made a cup of milk tea and placed it opposite Lilith. From beginning to end, Lilith didn't ask Noah if he wanted to drink tea. It was as if since she asked someone to make tea, then Noah must drink it. Not only did she do things her own way, but she was also very willful. If it were normal times, Noah might have ignored this young lady who did things her own way. Now, Noah still had something to ask Lilith, so he didn't mind accompanying her. At the moment, Noah sat directly opposite Lilith, glanced at Sarah, who was standing behind Lilith and still staring at him as if she had a blood feud with him. He supported his chin with his hand and said with disinterest. If you are really a young lady, I find it hard to believe that you would choose to live under the same roof with a person of the opposite sex who you have only met a few times and barely talked to. Lilith's action of drinking tea paused slightly, and her green eyes looked straight at Noah. Are you implying that I am too casual? Please interpret it as I see that you have another purpose. Noah also met Lilith's gaze, and his expression became quite meaningful. Am I wrong? You call yourself a special young lady? It's not that I call myself that, I am special. Lilith smiled at Noah unhurriedly. And you are also very special, aren't you? The exceptional student Noah? Let's stop beating around the bush, shall we? Noah slowly put away his smile. You should also tell me why you are targeting me, right? Yesterday, Lilith had already secretly observed Noah once, and she also tested Noah once last night. Noah didn't care what Lilith meant by special, but the other party was obviously targeting him. Even the matter of forming a tripping double edge with Noah seemed to be secretly manipulated by her. Lilith was not targeting Noah? Who would believe that? As a man, you're too paranoid. Lilith was still leisurely drinking tea in response to Noah's inquiry, but she also cast a glance at Noah from the corner of her eyes. However, if you must ask me if I have any purpose, my purpose is very simple. It is to form a tripping double edge with you, the exceptional. Huh? Noah suddenly made a puzzled sound. Don't make me say it a second time. Lilith put down the teacup in her hand and raised her eyes slightly with strong confidence. I came to form a tripping double edge with you. Chapter 229. Seeing the strong confidence in Lilith's green eyes, Noah understood. With the self-esteem of the girl named Lilith in front of him, she wouldn't beat around the bush or even be secretive about this kind of thing. That is to say, just like what Lilith herself said, she only had one purpose: to become a double-edged sword with Noah. Why? This question almost came out of Noah's mouth in the form of blurting out. Why do you want to spend so much effort just to form a double-edged sword with me? Why? Lilith, who heard Noah's question, was a little surprised. Do you still need to ask this kind of thing? Of course, it's because we are the same kind, isn't it? Hearing this, Noah was silent for a while and stared straight at Lilith's eyes. Is it just because of this? Don't you understand? Lilith was unusually calm, but there was a touch of excitement in her tone. The excitement of always thinking that only you are special, that only you are the only one, that only you have the unique blaze, but in the end, there is the same kind around you. Can't you understand? In other words, because you found out that you are not the only abnormal existence in this world, and you are not alone, but have the same kind, this feeling of almost getting rid of the loneliness, you feel happy? And this so-called abnormal existence should be referring to the fact that Lilith possessed a soul that theoretically should not have the blaze of the rifle. Our souls are all guns. There is no better evidence than this to prove that we are the same kind. Lilith smiled sweetly. That smile no longer had the confidence until just now, but it was particularly gentle. So, the exception, you, and the special, me, our meeting and combination is fate. When saying this sentence, Lilith's voice was full of joy. Obviously, to be able to meet someone who has the same type of blaze as her, Lilith really felt happy from the bottom of her heart. But, if the one who possesses the unique blaze is the same kind, then the 9-layer penetrations should be the same, right? Compared to Lilith's fervent voice, Noah's voice was surprisingly calm. Can't he be your double-edged sword? You're talking about that supernatural ability, right? As expected, Lilith knew about the 9-layer penetrations. She supported her cheek with one hand and looked straight at Noah. Of course, I'm happy about the fact that I have a kindred spirit, but there can only be one double-tripping blade. Therefore, compared to the shield of the 9 layers penetrating current, I prefer you who is a spear like me. After saying that, Lilith concluded with this sentence. After all, we have almost the same soul. The spacious room was suddenly filled with an indescribable silence. Noah was silent. He picked up the teacup filled with milk tea on the table and drank it. When the milk tea in the teacup was almost empty, Noah suddenly opened his mouth. The specific form of the blaze is different from person to person, right? Lilith was slightly surprised. Is there a problem? I just want to say that Ivan's blaze is at the katana, probably because he has always been learning kendo, so he is most familiar with swords and sabers. The 9-layer penetration's blaze is a shield, probably because he has a strong desire to protect something deep in his heart. Noah directly turned his gaze to Lilith. Then, Lilith, why would your blaze be a rifle? Is this what you want to ask? Lilith's pretty face relaxed little by little, as if she was immersed in some memories. After a while, she chuckled. I have liked hunting since I was a child. Hunting? Noah's face was full of surprise. Do you mean hunting? That's right, Lilith said as she gestured with her gun and made a shooting motion. For the structure of the gun used for hunting, I used to break it down and reorganize it again and again. I kept repeating this action until I completely mastered it. Now, even with my eyes closed, I can assemble a rifle. For me, the gun is a weapon that is more intimate than anything else, and it is also more familiar than anything else. Lilith spread her hands to Noah. Perhaps it is because of this that my blaze was able to materialize into a rifle, making me a unique existence. Now, Noah also understood. The dawn star pattern implanted in the body of the surpasser contained information about all weapons from ancient times to the present. Among them, it naturally included hot weapons and even other weapons that could be used as weapons. The reason why the blaze of the surpasser couldn't materialize into those hot weapons in the dawn star pattern was because their soul couldn't choose those weapons with complex structures. However, as mentioned earlier, a strong desire, a deep impression of experience, and other factors that could affect a person's mind, spirit, and even soul would cause the soul of the surpasser to choose the most suitable weapon from the weapon database of the Daybreak Star Tattoo to materialize. Although this was not an easy thing to do, if what Lilith said was true, and she was already familiar with guns to this extent, it was not impossible for her soul to choose the rifle under the influence of a strong desire, a deep impression of her experience, and other factors. It was not impossible that Lilith's soul would choose the rifle. After understanding this, Noah laughed, and his laugh was quite sarcastic. However, it was not directed at Lilith, but at Noah himself. No. Lilith. Noah said indifferently. We are not the same kind. What are you talking about? Lilith was stunned and then frowned. What do you mean we are not the same kind? Undoubtedly, our souls are all guns, right? That's why I said we are not the same kind. Noah closed his eyes. Even if our souls are in the form of guns, the color of our souls is not the same at all. Even if your soul turns into a gun, it is because you want to use the most familiar and most intimate gun to aim at animals, to aim at prey. Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and his voice was like a heavy hammer, hitting the deepest part of Lilith's heart. But, I am different. Different. Lilith looked at Noah in a daze, and a blank expression appeared on her face, then she froze. What's different? What's different? Noah said in a self-deprecating tone. The difference is that your gun's muzzle used to only aim at animals and take away their lives, but my gun's muzzle used to only aim at people and take away their lives. Lilith's beautiful face froze. Not to mention Lilith, even Sarah, who had been silent at the side, suddenly had her pupils shrink, and her face was shaken. People? Take away people's lives? Is this true? Do you understand? Noah stood up, looked at Lilith condescendingly, and said word by word. Your soul is still pure white, but my soul has long been stained with the bright red. Even if they are both guns, the weight of the two guns is not the same. So, Lilith. Noah turned around, as if deliberately not letting Lilith see his current expression. Please forgive me for not being able to agree with your so-called the same kind. Leaving this sentence, Noah did not say anything else, and walked towards the direction of the bed. I am tired, I will rest for a while. Lilith could only silently look at Noah lying on the bed, and for a long time, she did not return to her senses. Chapter 230. The conversation with Lilith made it easier for Noah to fall into a deep sleep today than usual. Of course, it was not because of the so-called theory of different colors of souls that covered Noah's heart with a layer of haze. Although Noah did kill someone once, Noah had never regretted what he did that time, nor did he have any psychological burden because of it. After all, those people really did deserve to die. However, Noah's thoughts were also true. He did not want Lilith to classify him as the same kind as himself. Although the young lady was a bit willful and overconfident, the happiness and joy she showed when she found out that she had the same unique blaze as herself was from the bottom of her heart. Under such circumstances, if Lilith knew that the reason why Noah's blaze was the same gun as her was not because of the same soul, but because the weapon that originally existed was spiritualized and merged into one's own soul before being born, how disappointed would she be? Therefore, from the beginning, Noah and Lilith were not the same kind. In that case, if Noah let Lilith treat him as the same kind as her and continue to feel happy, wouldn't it be equivalent to deceiving this young lady who really wanted to find a kind from the bottom of her heart? Under the influence of such thoughts, Noah also rejected Lilith's idea of kind. Of course, this was equivalent to pouring cold water on Lilith, but at least it was better than deceiving Lilith. Besides, Lilith also had a real kind. 9-layer penetrations. The 9-layer penetrations that had the same form as Lilith's blaze that should not have appeared was Lilith's kind in the true sense. In this way, even if he poured cold water on Lilith, in the case that there was still a kind, she would not be too disappointed, right? However, the matter of Noah pouring cold water on Lilith was also a fact. The reason why he fell asleep so quickly was not so much because he felt pressured, but because Noah wanted to give Lilith some space. Therefore, Lilith and Sarah in the room did not make a sound, and Noah himself urged himself to sleep, so Noah quickly fell into a deep sleep. In a daze, at a certain moment, Noah heard a murmur in his ear. "What do you mean not kind? Don't you even sleep like an ordinary person?" The murmur was like a layer of mist, slowly shrouding Noah's ears. "No matter what, since I have decided to let you be my tripping blade, I will not make a second decision. This is also fate." As soon as this sentence fell, a rather hot temperature approached Noah. "Okay, I'm going to sleep too." Immediately, the rustling noises began to reverberate, and the temperature near Noah stabilized. It seemed that the distance between them was no longer closing. However, even in his sleep, Noah could still feel the temperature, and he slept more soundly. The night passed quietly. In a half-asleep state, when his consciousness was still quite hazy, Noah suddenly felt an abnormal fullness and softness wrapping around him. Not only did it hug his neck tightly, but it also pressed its whole body on Noah's body. That feeling, to be honest, if he hugged it like this, it would be more comfortable than hugging a pillow, right? However, Noah slowly furrowed his brows in his sleep. Just because, Noah felt that his face seemed to be buried, and it made him feel suffocated. Even if there was no hostility, malice, or killing intent around him, Noah's vigilance was not as high as before, and could be regarded as an ordinary person. But if he couldn't breathe, no matter who it was, he wouldn't be able to sleep, unless he wanted to never wake up. Unfortunately, Noah was still able to wake up. So, under the urging of the suffocating feeling, Noah gradually opened his eyes. However, in the next second, the thing that entered Noah's vision made Noah's consciousness completely awake in an instant, and even crashed. What entered Noah's vision was white. Unusually white. White like a pearl. It was a color that only appeared on extremely elastic and perfectly maintained skin. In other words, the white that entered Noah's vision was all the color of skin. And the owner of this white skin directly hugged Noah tightly in her arms, so that Noah's face was tightly buried in the other party's arms, and he couldn't even breathe. Noah's eyes opened to the maximum in an instant, and he understood his current state. To sum it up in a simple and clear sentence, a girl hugged Noah tightly. Moreover, she was naked, like holding a baby, hugging Noah's head into her arms, and her smooth and tender body was all squeezed on Noah's body. Noah's first reaction, who understood the situation, was to take a breath of cold air. This breath seemed to have awakened the other party. Woo! A lazy voice came into Noah's ears. So itchy, this voice, like a bomb, was detonated in Noah's head. Noah, who was in a mess due to the explosion, bounced up with a miraculous speed that could surpass the leaped out, and instantly left the enviable white skin. Then, Noah saw it. He saw Lilith, who kicked away the thin sheet and was naked. Lilith seemed to be aware of the movement around her. She opened her half-closed eyes and subconsciously propped up her upper body. Suddenly, a very overwhelming and impactful posture was deeply imprinted in Noah's mind. In such a situation, Lilith, who was in a daze, spoke. "Sarah? Is it dawn?" No, I'm not your strange butler." Noah's voice trembled. Why are you, in this state?" "What do you mean why?" Lilith was still in a daze as she yawned cutely. "I don't understand what you're talking about." It's just clothes." "Clothes?" Lilith seemed to be a little sober and said lazily. "You know I can't sleep if I wear clothes, Sarah. I told you that I'm not that weird butler of yours." Noah finally regained his normal train of thought and quickly turned his head away. "Anyway, you should put on your clothes first." "Yes," Lilith responded in a daze, and immediately lowered her head. She lay down again and fell asleep. "Lilith?" After not getting a response for a long time, Noah could only glance in Lilith's direction. When he found that Lilith had fallen asleep again, he was suddenly speechless. If he took a closer look, although the sky was now bright, it was not to the extent of being completely bright. Even the students in the other dormitory should still be sleeping, right? Noah sighed secretly and tried not to look at Lilith. He picked up the quilt that Lilith kicked off and covered Lilith's body. "Undoubtedly, you look so mature, but now you look like a child who needs to be taken care of. What's going on?" With a wry smile on his face, Noah got up and got out of bed. After a simple wash, he took out his uniform from the closet, put on his clothes, and walked out of the room quietly. Gotcha. When the door was gently closed, Lilith, who was lying on the bed, opened one of her eyes and looked in the direction of the door, showing an expression of a successful prank. "Sure enough, it's better to let you become my tripping blade." Needless to say, Lilith was completely pretending to be asleep just now. "However, I didn't expect him to see me naked on the first day. I even covered myself with a quilt last night." Lilith pulled the quilt hard to cover her head, and a muffled voice came from it. "Forget it, just treat it as a special benefit for you." After saying that, not long after, the rhythmic sound of breathing could be heard once again from under the sheets. Chapter 231. The school was exceptionally quiet in the early morning. Perhaps it was because Noah came out too early, but now, except for some students who were more diligent in the morning and came out for morning jogging or early practice, there was almost no one walking on the road. A weak wind blew from afar, causing the trees on both sides of the road to sway and make rustling sounds. Pink cherry blossoms danced in the wind, drawing beautiful arcs and falling to the ground. Such a scene was exceptionally pleasing to the eye. Because it was a bit early to go to the cafeteria, Noah randomly chose a road and took a walk in the school. Speaking of which, ever since he came to this school, Noah had not strolled in the school as seriously as he did today. If one did not look at the nature of Haolang School, this school was far superior to other schools in terms of both scale and level. From the map of Haolang School that Noah saw in the student handbook, this school not only had playgrounds, training grounds, and even gyms for people to exercise, but also several squares, parks, flower beds, and pavilions. For a school, such a scale was already very impressive. At least, Noah could guarantee that in this country, there should be no other school that could compare with Haolang School. It was believed that many people would choose to stroll around the school during their free time and enjoy the scenery of this luxurious school. When Noah came to the school on the first day, he was also amazed by the scenery here, but because of various things that happened later, Noah had not had a chance to seriously walk around the school. Today, because of Lilith, Noah got a chance. After removing the matter of Lilith from his mind, Noah leisurely strolled in the school with a pace that was relatively slow compared to the past. Around him, every once in a while, one or two students wearing gymnastic clothes and running in the school would occasionally pass by Noah. Some did not notice Noah, while some seemed to recognize Noah and ran past Noah while muttering something. From time to time, Noah would hear the word exception in the midst of these mutterings. From a certain point of view, this batch of first-year students was really easy to attract attention. Blaze, who owned a revolver, was known as the exception Noah. The Blaze, that possessed the shield, was also known as the 9 layers penetration of the ability. Julie had a doll-like appearance, but her strength was completely inversely proportional to her appearance. There was also the heir to the famous Tangerine 18 Arts, Tangerine Ba, who came from a martial arts family. Even Ivanley had become quite famous because of his outstanding appearance and outstanding swordsmanship. Ivanyo was said to be very popular among the boys. Of course, the reason why the latter was so popular with boys was not only because of her delicate appearance that made people want to protect her, but also because of her proud chest that couldn't be ignored. And everyone's popularity had been raised recently, becoming one of the few, level 2, surpassers, among the freshmen, and there was a tendency for it to rise even higher. In addition, Lilith, who had recently transferred over from her sister school in the UK, had the title of Special, and seemed to have an extremely noble background. Her appearance didn't lose out to Julie's at all, and her figure even exceeded Julie's by more than a notch. This batch of freshmen indeed often became the center of conversation for others. Because of this, Noah could not help but mutter. Isn't this a bit too eye-catching? If you're talking about yourself, then there's nothing I can do about it. Who knew that as soon as Noah's words fell, a voice responded immediately. After all, now everyone knows that you and the super beautiful girl from England have formed an official, tripping double blade, and even lived together. Noah's footsteps stopped, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, then he helplessly turned around and looked behind him. Ivan, in a gymnastic suit, seemed to have just gone through some intense exercise, and his body was sweating all over, standing behind Noah. His hands were crossed in front of his chest, highlighting a pair of perfectly round breasts. His eyes were half squinted on his pretty face, and he looked angry. What's wrong? Noah? Why isn't your cohabiting beautiful transfer student by your side? When he said this, although Ivan's tone sounded like he was making fun of Noah, a careful person would be able to hear a hint of bitterness. If it was normal, Noah might be able to hear the real meaning hidden in Ivan's words. But he didn't know if it was because of Lilith's stimulation in the morning. The moment he saw Ivan, Noah couldn't help but move his gaze down and cast it on Ivan's chest. It had to be said that even if Ivan was not as good as Ya, he was not inferior to Lilith. Noah had accidentally seen Ivan's naked body before. Inadvertently, Noah compared it with Lilith's naked body he saw in the morning, and he was surprised to find that in terms of shape, Ivan seemed to be more beautiful. Ivan, who didn't know that his body was compared to other girls by the only person of the opposite sex so far, looked at Noah's somewhat complicated and dull expression, and he was a little angry. Noah, did you hear me talking to you? Huh? Noah woke up and realized what he had just imagined. He couldn't help but scold himself in his heart, and immediately smiled embarrassedly. Ma, good morning. Good morning. What the hell? Ivan stretched out his finger and poked Noah's forehead. He leaned forward, put his face in front of Noah, put his hands on his waist, and stared at Noah angrily. The Noah I know is not a guy who stares at other people's faces in a daze. Tell me, who are you, and why are you pretending to be Noah? What are you talking about? Noah smiled bitterly. Besides, I'm not staring at your face in a daze, I'm looking at your chest, Ivan suddenly froze. Chest. Noah fiercely swallowed back the word that almost jumped out of his mouth, and his face turned red, and he hurriedly changed the topic. Right, Ivan, why are you so early today? I just came out to do morning exercises as usual. You know that I have a habit of doing morning exercises. Ivan was a little hesitant. And, I can't sleep very well. You can't sleep? Noah asked in confusion. What's wrong? Why can't you sleep? No. What? What? Ivan inexplicably said this sentence out of anger, stretched out his hand, and poked Noah's forehead again. You should go back and care about your cohabitant. After saying that, Ivan coldly snorted, turned around, and ran in another direction. What's going on? Noah touched his forehead, and could only helplessly chase after him. What did I do to make you angry? I said it's nothing. Ivan said, but his angry tone was not convincing at all. Shio. Just as Noah was about to say something, the sound of something tearing through the air rang out, causing Noah's expression to freeze. In the next moment, his entire body tensed up. Without the slightest hesitation, Noah suddenly turned around, raised his hand, clenched it into a fist, and fiercely smashed it behind him. Pung! In the next moment, a muffled sound came from behind Noah, and a violent ripple of energy spread out from the front of Noah's fist, swinging in all directions. Taking a closer look, in front of the fist that Noah had swung out, there was another slender and fair fist on top of it. Then, from the slender and white fist, a force was transmitted that shook Noah's body back, and after a few steps, he stabilized. This made Noah raise his head, and looked forward with an ugly face. There, a girl with long black hair was swinging her palm that just hit Noah's fist, and her face was full of arrogance, revealing a fierce smile. The girl was wearing a maid costume, and a pair of rabbit ears on her head. Ivan, who was aware of the movement behind him, quickly turned around, and when he saw the girl who attacked Noah, his face changed. Teacher Little Rabbit? Impressively, it was Moonsight Glass Rabbit. Chapter 232. W.H. Why? The sudden appearance of the Moonlight Glass Rabbit seemed to have a huge impact on Ivan, causing him to be unable to react for a moment. On the other hand, Noah didn't have the slightest doubt about Tsukuyomi's sudden appearance. He just slowly raised his face and looked straight ahead with his slightly cold eyes. Not a bad gaze, exception. Receiving Noah's cold gaze, Tsukuyomi didn't get angry at all. It was as if the matter of her being seriously injured by Noah didn't happen at all. She even licked the corner of her mouth excitedly. You're making me restless. I want to fight you again. Want to fight? Noah glanced at Ivan, who was still in a daze, and took a step forward to shield Ivan behind him. Then, he sneered at Moonlit Glass Bunny. You shouldn't have said that after you've finished fighting, right? Tsukuyomi-sensei. If I really want to fight, I will directly use Blaze. Tsukuyomi spread out her hands, the smile on her face was still a bit ruthless and fierce. I just heard that you've risen to grade 2, so I came to greet you. I'm happy from the bottom of my heart that you've become stronger, classmate Noah. While saying such a sentence, Tsukuyomi's face showed a very happy expression, proving that what she said was true. Although I really want to fight with you again, but unfortunately, if I fight with you here again, I will lose the job that I picked up. The job that you picked up? Ivan finally reacted. He stepped out from behind Noah, took a convenient attacking posture, and asked loudly. What do you mean by that? It was no wonder that Ivan's reaction was so intense. After all, last time when Tsukuyomi wanted to kill Noah and his group, she also used the excuse of job. Now that she used this excuse again, it was no wonder that Ivan was so vigilant. You want to know? Tsukuyomi raised her chin and grinned. It's very simple. My employer has changed to this school, and now I am a real teacher. What did you say? Ivan's eyes widened in shock. Could it be that the school plans to hire you to teach us? Ha 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 ha. Tsukuyomi held her stomach and laughed. Her laughter was full of sarcasm. That's right. That's what it is. How? How could this be? Ivan was a little panicked. This. How could such a ridiculous thing happen? Undoubtedly, the guy who called himself a teacher in front of him tried to kill his own student not long ago. In the end, not only did the school not punish him, but they also hired him to continue to be a teacher. How could such a thing not be absurd? Is it ridiculous? Yu Jianli too put her hands on her waist and shrugged her shoulders as if she was enjoying Ivanli's performance from the bottom of her heart. I say, Ponytail sister, how ridiculous is this school? Don't tell me you've only just realized it today? Ivan was speechless. Indeed. No matter how you look at it, the school will let the students fight in the entrance ceremony. The loser will be directly driven away. The daily training is more rigorous than the military, and even the school itself is using the students as lab rats for research. No matter how you look at it, it is ridiculous. Making the murderer, Yu Jianli Rabbit, pick up the pointer again. Compared to these matters, it was quite similar to the school council's decision. Only Noah, after hearing Tsukuyomi's words, the sarcastic expression on his face couldn't be concealed, which made Tsukuyomi raise her eyebrows and look at him with deep meaning. Oh, it seems that you know a lot of things, exception. Obviously, Tsukuyomi didn't think that Noah showed such an expression because of her perfunctory words. Noah must have known some inside information. In fact, Noah didn't know anything, but guessed something. Don't forget, Tsukuyomi is a surpasser, an existence that can only be created by the Dawn organization. How could the Dawn organization allow the individual who was responsible for their greatest research results to work for others and not control it in their own hands? Therefore, instead of letting Noah believe that Tsukuyomi sneaked into the Dawn organization, sneaked into this school, became a surpasser with great difficulty, and even became a surpasser teacher in the school, but in the end, exposed her identity in order to kill a few promising students, Noah is more willing to believe in his own guess. That is, Tsukuyomi's actions, in itself, were allowed by the school. That is to say, Tsukuyomi attacking Noah and the others, these students, were all instructed by the school's higher-ups. Otherwise, if Yu saw that the glass rabbit was a spy sent from somewhere else to infiltrate the school to assassinate promising students, she wouldn't have let her actions be so unscrupulous that day just to kill a few students. Unless, Tsukuyomi didn't care that her identity was exposed, causing her to be unable to eliminate the more promising students who enter the school in the future. Sure enough, you're not as easy to deal with as those naive brats. Tsukuyomi looked deeply at Noah and curled her lips. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Wait until class later, you'll know whether it's true or not. I just came to tell you, don't make too much of a fuss in the classroom. The chairman's daughter probably won't let such a thing happen. After saying that, Tsukuyomi's temperament changed, the rabbit ears on her head shook, and she threw a coquettish glance at Noah, putting on a sweet and cute appearance as before. You too, don't be late for class. Leaving such a sentence, Tsukuyomi skipped away. That appearance, compared to the fierce and violent appearance just now, was simply a polar opposite. Noah. Ivanli was a little uneasy as he hugged Noah's arm. Don't worry, Noah, who watched Tsukuyomi leave, patted Ivanli's hand and said without turning his head. Don't care whether what she said is true or not. Looking at her appearance, she won't do anything for the time being. Let's just wait and see. Hearing this, Ivanli's expression relaxed slightly and nodded heavily. Together with Noah, they looked at Tsukuyomi's back that was gradually getting farther and farther away, and didn't say anything else. Just as Yu Jianli too had said, today, the substitute teacher, Three Kingdoms, brought Yu Jianli too into the classroom and announced her return. Of course, other than Noah and Ivanli who already knew about this matter, Julie, Tachibana, Kyujuju Turyu, Kawai Tokasaki, and the others almost attacked Sukatsun Bunny in anger. However, Three Kingdoms seemed to have specially come to the classroom for this moment. Julie and the others only had time to abruptly stand up, but before they could do anything, he stopped them and acted as if he didn't know anything, and let Tsukuyomi continue teaching. On the other hand, Yu Jianli too completely ignored Noah and the others, as if she had completely forgotten that she had tried to kill her own student. Just like before, she pretended to be cute while jumping back and forth happily. This made the people who knew Yu Jianlitu's true colors gnash their teeth in hatred. After class, as soon as Tsukimi left the classroom, Tachibana, Kyujituryu, and Kue Inokazaki, who were sitting further away, all gathered around Noah's seat. After Ivanli's explanation, everyone finally understood what was going on, and immediately fell into a stifling silence. Tisk, Kue Inokazaki clenched her teeth. It really doesn't feel good to have someone who almost killed me by my side. Kyujituryu nodded heavily, and even Julie, Tachibana, and the others showed complicated expressions. Everyone, don't be afraid. At this time, it was Ivanli who revealed his cheerful voice and comforted everyone. Teacher Little Rabbit is no match for Noah, so she won't dare to act recklessly. Everyone was slightly stunned, and they all looked at Noah, who was at ease. Then, their tense faces relaxed. Needless to say, everyone agreed with Ivanli's words. Only Noah knew that if he really went against Tsukimi, it would definitely be more troublesome than the last time. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.